This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, a weekly, proudly progressive show where we like to remind you liberal is not a bad word. Good morning, Shano.
Good morning. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you.
It's going to be a great show.
It is. We have great
really
super guests today. We're very excited. And we will tell you everybody who's going to be here in just a minute. But first, we like to cover the news that you may have missed this week. Starting with a story that was recently posted on rawstory.com regarding a new Human Rights Watch report about a failure to vacate law in Arkansas being used essentially as a debtor's prison. And I think this is a very big deal, and people need to be aware of it. The so-called pay the rent or face arrest law is a new manner in which police, landlords, and corrupt public officials are charging tenants with crimes and arresting them over being as little as 10 days late on the rent. And there are some major legal ramifications. Things seem very much not correct in this.
Yeah, and we mentioned this a lot last year, using different kinds of legal maneuvers to essentially put people in jail for not paying their bills. We've outlawed debtor's prisons a very long time ago.
Yes, 1833.
But they're using things, and we reported on this last year, that a lot of debt collectors are suing, and then if you don't show up, you get thrown in jail for failure to appear. This seems to be another one of those legal loopholes that they're trying to use, essentially a trespass type of thing. The problem is that it's on the word of the landlord. So there's some due process issues here, and hopefully there are some fine attorneys out there, because if you can't pay your rent, or if you're having difficulty paying your rent, it's going to be a hard time. You're going to have a hard time paying for an attorney. Hopefully there'll be some attorneys, some pro bono attorneys who take this up and say, listen, just on the say-so of some landlord who could have an ulterior motive or whatever, you can't throw people in jail.
Right. I mean, this has
without
some major...
an eviction notice? I mean, come on.
This has some major ramifications. Yes, all they have to do is threaten an eviction notice or threaten to, essentially have you arrested. This law has already been used to bring charges against 1,200 Arkansas tenants just in 2012, and it's probably affected many more than that, as most people, when threatened with arrest, scramble to move out within the 10 days instead of, possibly
That's a lot of leverage for a landlord.
Imagine, the so-called slumlords that you can't get to make a repair or, return a security deposit, or, there's so many issues that arise in the landlord-tenant situation. And any of them can essentially be, this is the landlord's word. So, okay, you won't fix my sink. Oh, well, I'm not going to pay you rent. And
sure.
Okay, so you end up in jail.
Constructive evictions, that would be a situation. Yeah, I never even thought of that.
Right.
Constructive eviction is such that your apartment is so unlivable. You don't have running water, for example. You have no electricity because there was a short in the line, not because they turned it off or whatever. One of those situations where your apartment is not worth the rent you're paying. So what you can do is you can withhold your rent and say, you have constructively evicted me. I will not pay you until you fix this.
Right.
You lose that remedy altogether.
Right. I mean, essentially, on the books, it's still there, but all the landlord has to do is say, you didn't pay your rent. And
call the cops.
And not only do you lose your home, but you end up in jail.
Amazing.
And worse yet, it strongly discourages accused tenants from pleading guilty, because if you pleading not guilty, because those who plead not guilty are required to put the said rent money into an account with the court, or they forfeit their right to plead not guilty. If they are found guilty of not paying the rent, they lose that money from the court. So this is essentially debtor's prison.
Oh, wait, let's step back a second. So if you don't have the money to put into escrow,
right, you cannot plead not guilty.
See, that just violates the Constitution right there on its face.
Right. And tenants who are unable to...
Because, say, for example, you did pay your rent. Your landlord's just a jerk.
Yeah.
So you've paid your rent. You don't have a whole lot in your account. Landlord says, no, they didn't pay it.
Right.
On their word, you say, I'm not guilty. I paid my rent.
Right.
Well, put the rent in escrow. Well, I don't have it because I paid my rent.
You could end up in jail. And worse yet, if you are unable to deposit that rent money with the court, and you actually face much more substantial jail time, up to 90 days in jail, if found guilty of not paying your rent.
That's an incredible amount of leverage. Taking someone's liberty without process.
Yeah.
Wow.
As Johnny in the chat room suggested, I'd really like to know what the private prison industry's role in all this, if this is an ALEC piece of legislation.
Do you know, does it say how long this legislation has been around?
It says at least since 2012. There is a full report at Human Rights Watch.
Cool.
Obviously, to fit the story in the news, we're giving you the shorter version. Yeah, but even one woman...
The full version is 30 days.
Yeah, exactly. One woman was repeatedly charged under the law, repeatedly arrested on false reports from a man she bought her house from, even though she paid for the house in full.
Wow.
Yeah. So talk about being able to manipulate this law just to harass people. Really great.
Like I said, hopefully there is an attorney out there, and we'll take one of these cases up pro bono, and you get a decent appeals court to say this is a bunch of bull.
Right.
You can't do this.
Many states at least protect people.
One of those times that judicial review is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most, or at least states that I've lived in, have had renters' rights where you at least have 30 days. There's rights to protect the renter. And it looks like in Arkansas, the laws specifically are geared toward...
In fact, at the turn of the last century, the early 1900s and 1920s, 1930s, a lot of states had a real movement towards renters' rights. So if you go to someplace like the state of New York, there are a lot of rules you have to go through, notices to cure and
right.
Notice requirements, process requirements, and things like that, where tenants have the opportunity to actually fix whatever the violation is, as do the landlords, to make sure that because they are really unequal bargaining positions. One person has the ability to take away your home. One
right.
of the three,
and anybody who rents or anybody who has rented, which is the majority, I believe, of the population, knows how hard it is to relocate in 10 days.
No kidding. And expensive.
Right.
You lose your stuff.
Right.
Because I can see landlords saying, oh, you had to get the heck out because you didn't want to get arrested. Now all your stuff's mine.
Right.
I'm going to go sell it or keep it or whatever.
Well, in some good news, something that states are doing that we can actually applaud is opening school health clinics to expand access to basic health care to the surrounding communities. There are several schools throughout the country doing this. One of the clinics cited was in the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is rolling out 14 new wellness centers to benefit impoverished neighborhoods. And they list resident Maria Morales, who, when her children got sick, used to have to drive to Tijuana, actually to another country, in order to afford to care for her children. And now she will be able to walk just a couple blocks to Garfield High School. More of the schools are actually looking to expand the patient base in order to sustain the health clinics. Many of these were closed or, rough run into the ground because of state budget cuts. But a $200 million earmark in the Affordable Care Act is being used to build, equip, and expand services at these clinics. However, that does not cover administrative costs. It doesn't cover enough to keep the doors open. So these school clinics are expanding to care for neighborhood residents at very low cost, but do so to make just enough of a stream of revenue to keep their doors open.
You mean they're nonprofit?
They're nonprofit.
Hey, how about that? Nonprofit can work.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cost as much.
Already about 1,800 school-based medical centers operate across the country, but many of them only serve students or staff. So they're expanding their care to allow residents within the neighborhood, especially low-income residents, to have access to quality basic health care services.
That's fantastic.
And they're even doing
that darn Obamacare doing all that good.
Exactly. They're even doing it with a big concern to make sure that they also don't violate the privacy rights of the students, because a lot of these are high schools where students use the school clinics to seek contraceptive or pregnancy tests or even treatment.
They're covered by HIPAA.
Treatment for STDs, yes, but they're doing so with actually making separate waiting rooms so that students can still have privacy and see those clinics and get care.
Oh, because you're talking about like the school nurse where everyone could hear everyone else's business.
Right.
It's the
right.
The solution to that is what you're saying.
Exactly. They're making sure that students still have access to private care. And a lot of kids will now also be able to try out and participate in sports teams and other, extracurricular activities that they previously couldn't because they were required to get physicals that their parents couldn't afford. So, this, if you think long term, I mean, this could open more scholarships up to kids, better basic health care for the community. I think this is a win-win. They can check out their concussions
when they get them in football.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
We'll throw back to last week.
Naysayer. Yes. But good on them, and check your local community. You may have a new health care center that's just within walking distance. So a lot of these will be rolled out this year and treating patients, in just a few months. So good news there. And yes, some smelly news in Spain. A little smelly in Spain today as plastic garbage bags are stacked chest high in many areas as the, where are we here? The municipal street cleaning company Lipasam, I think, Lipasam, Lipasam, their 1,600 employee workforce is on strike and refusing to clean up garbage after rejecting a plan to reduce their wages by 5% and increase their working hours. These were demands put on them by city officials and government officials trying to balance the budget because of Spain's austerity measures. But they will have none of it. They are leaving the garbage on the streets in protest over Spain's continued austerity. And it'll be really interesting to see how long...
We talked about leverage in the first story. I think that's even more leverage.
Yes. How much stink can city officials stand before they give in to the Lipasam municipal street cleaning company? So good on them. Unionized people standing up for their rights. Hopefully it'll spark more people in Spain demanding an end to devastating austerity.
And Sally sells seashells by the seashore. A lot of S's in that one.
Lots of S's. Yes.
Strikes and stinking in Spain.
That's what you need bright and early in the morning.
How's that breakfast going?
Many people earlier this month heard of the Applebee's waitress being fired for sharing a picture of a receipt in which a pastor said, "I only give God 10%, so why do you get 18?" The pastor crossed out the tip and refused to give, any tip at all to an Applebee's waitress. Never said she gave bad service, never complained about the dining experience, just simply did it out of protest. Well, now you have to love good people and what the internet does. This was hilarious, and you can check it out at Democratic Underground. There's a picture of it there, where Applebee's waitresses are now being tipped 28%. There's a picture of a receipt in which someone has written, "I give God 0%, so you get 28." On a $37 tip, someone laid out $10.46 to reward the waitress. And this was even a car side to go order.
Isn't it amazing that atheists are more Christ-like?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Really interesting that somebody who probably doesn't consider themselves a Christian knows what Christian charity should be.
And it isn't charity, by the way.
No, but
it is not charity.
It's earned. This is how people who live on tips survive. The federal minimum wage for a tipped employee is $2.13 an hour. There are a few states that demand a higher wage for tipped employees, but according to the federal government, if you make more than $30 of tips per month, your employer can get away with paying you $2.13 an hour. And somebody wants to complain about you getting 18%. Oh, and by the way, there were more than 8 people in that 18% automatic gratuity original story. Anybody who's, worked in service or been at a table that's had a large party, it's automatically added. It's not like the waitress is, asking for your last dollar. But the funniest story, and we had to save it for last. Tea Party students at North Carolina State University are very upset that the state's Union Activities Board has purchased $300 worth of sex toys for a so-called game of Dirty Bingo. They're very upset about this. The Union Activities Board president, Lauren A. Collier, said that the purpose of the event is to find an evocative and entertaining way to talk about sex and sex education, particularly on a college campus, which deviates from the norm. The certified educators plan to use some of the purchased items to demonstrate safe and healthy sex practices, and the others are gag gifts or non-educational prizes to add to the humorous and dirty-themed event. So sounds quite hilarious. Sounds like it would get college kids involved in a real sex education discussion.
Sure. Actually, sounds like that movie, The Girl Next Door.
Yes, it does. But the Young Americans for Liberty, a group originally formed to support Ron Paul's 2008 presidential campaign, expressed outrage over the event. Yes, I kid you not, NC State student Jason Voluntarist said, "We still have some sense of integrity, and we ought to understand the difference between a truly academic, relevant event and simply screwing around."
Seriously.
Seriously, posted that on Facebook. Did he not see the
Dude,
the obvious pun there? Yeah.
I have to be really careful.
Yes. Collier, the UAB president, said, "This actually works out really well, and at $300, the cost of this educational course is less than 1 penny per student. 1 penny. If we can't afford to pay 1 penny to educate our young men and women about safe sex practices, there's a big problem." I think the Tea Party group needs to loosen up a little.
A little bit.
Yes.
I thought they were all libertarians. Do whatever you want. Hey.
Exactly. You're free to do whatever you want, except for play with sex toys. So, big
These
show.
are teabaggers, by the way.
Yes, apparently they don't like teabagging in public.
Wow.
Yes. Big show today. Richard Fowler, host of the Richard Fowler Show on WeAct Radio. Hal Sparks, host of the Hal Sparks radio program worldwide. Lee Camp, creator of the moment.
Mega
Worldwide.
You have to do that voice too.
Mega Worldwide. Lee Camp, of course, of LeeCamp.net, amazing activist, comedian, and creator of the Moments of Clarity podcast. And Nicole Belle of Crooks and Liars. Big show. We're very excited to be here today. Hope you guys are too. Danielle and Shano, you are listening to Talking Left, and we will be right back in just a few minutes. Stick around.
Okay, astronaut, you're up. You'll be meeting with Wish Kid Brandon.
Roger, Brandon.
His wish is to see a space shuttle launch.
All systems are go. We are clear for liftoff.
This year, more than 27,000 children will be diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition.
And, Cowboy,
Yes, ma'am.
you'll be meeting with Shayla at a dude ranch in San Antonio.
Let's saddle up.
Some will miss school, some will miss time with their family and friends.
Princess, are you here?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for rescuing me from that evil witch.
Juliana wishes for a princess-themed room makeover.
That sounds magical.
But with your help, the Make-A-Wish Foundation can lift their spirits and give them a special kind of hope.
Pirate,
Yar!
you're up for Isaac's wish.
Aye, aye, Captain.
The wishes of thousands of children are waiting to come true.
You can help make my wish happen. Visit wish.org today.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without big brothers, big sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time,
you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from bradblog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of bradblog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
Hank Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. So for anybody who hasn't watched a bit of news, you may have not noticed that there are 20 days until the March 1st deadline of the Sequester. And right before Congress is supposed to compromise on which budget cuts need to be taken, Senator Bernie Sanders and Jan Schakowsky have actually introduced a real solution. Something that would actually benefit this country without imposing austerity. And that's the Corporate Tax Fairness Act. And to me, it proves that some leaders actually do know what needs to be done to fix our economy. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the current tax system provides huge incentives to U.S. firms to ship jobs overseas and keep profits in Cayman Island banking accounts. But Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Jan Schakowsky say that it's time to end these unfair practices. This legislation would make corporations pay their fair share in U.S.
Oh, wait, I thought we had the highest corporate tax rate in the world.
How about no? In 2011, the effective tax rate...
Oh, wait. You mean there's a difference?
Yes.
Aha.
In 2011, the effective tax rate that corporations paid was the lowest in 40 years at just 12.1%.
So all of this baloney from the right saying we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, that we have to reduce it. In some states, they want to make it zero.
Exactly.
Is a bunch of malarkey.
Exactly.
As Joe Biden would say.
Yes. This legislation would make corporations actually pay taxes regardless of where they made their money, and it would stop giving them tax breaks to take our jobs away. And I can promise you, you're going to hear a talking point if this bill actually even makes it into the discussion. You're going to hear people from the right say, well, they're already paying taxes in the country that they're doing business in, and so making them pay taxes here as well would be taxing them twice.
Well, make it right off. Make them able to write it off.
Yeah. First of all, that in and of itself wouldn't bother me. If you want to have, the opportunity to do business here, pay
Hell,
your
make
darn
it
taxes.
zero and just make carried interest and capital gains 40%. I'll deal with that too.
Well, but this bill already does away with that talking point.
Oh, good.
Yes.
They're much smarter than me.
When an American corporation has profits in a country with a lower corporate tax rate, and it makes its money there and it's taxed there, they would only pay the difference
So they are able to
between
write it
the
off.
foreign rate and the U.S. rate. So when you hear Republicans talking about this bill and saying that corporations will be taxed twice, it just know on its face it's absolutely a lie. And according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, this bill would raise $590 billion in revenue over the next decade. And just to put that in perspective, that is half of the entire sequester that needs to be dealt with by
And you
March
think about
1st.
this, the tax receipts as a percentage of GDP is the lowest in over 40 years, yet the stock market is pushing 14,000.
Exactly.
Maybe that's where the problem might be in terms of we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem.
Right.
There you go.
So good on Jan Schakowsky and Senator Bernie Sanders, two of our favorites. But we should definitely be calling our senators, calling our representatives, and asking them to support this bill, as well as sharing it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, whatever social media networks you use. Just get the word out on this. We don't have to go into the sequester. We don't have to be hit with the $85 billion of austerity that's coming just this year. There is another solution, thanks to Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Jan Schakowsky. And now it's up to us to fight for it. We're going to be talking to Richard Fowler, host of The Richard Fowler Show on WeAct Radio, about that and more in just a few minutes. This is Danielle and Shano. You're listening to Talking Left on WeAct Radio, SoFlo Radio, and RadioOrNot.com. We'll be right back.
What is this? What's going on?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Peg Cece knows that it's not enough to work hard in these perilous financial times, but you also have to work smart. And that's exactly what she's doing on behalf of American taxpayers. Well, not us common taxpayers, but uncommonly rich ones. They are private equity hucksters who make fabulous incomes by using other rich people's money to take over corporations, fire thousands of employees, sell off chunks of the entity, and siphon out profits for themselves and their rich investors. Also, Peg CC is not a person, but PEGCC, the acronym for a lobbying group called the Private Equity Growth Capital Council. Peg is hard at work on Capitol Hill to protect its wheeler-dealer members, including their national poster boy, Mitt Romney, from having their taxes hiked. Incredibly, their tax rate has been a mere 15%, lower even than what teachers and factory workers pay. But now, with Congress threatening to whack Social Security and Medicare, these privileged ones can't justify their low rate and are in danger of being treated, oh, the unspeakable horror of it, like commoners. Peg knows that last year's exposure of Romney's private equity profiteering and tax dodging has made the continuation of such pampering politically untenable. So this year, the group is smartly shifting from outright opposition to minimization of any, quote, burden on their phenomenal wealth. Raise the rate just a little bit, their lobbyists are quietly telling lawmakers, and delay the implementation of the increase so our lawyers can carve out loopholes and build more escape hatches, such as offshore tax shelters and phony corporate fronts. This is Jim Hightower saying what's on display here is the raw selfishness of the entitled rich. To keep up with their tax-dodging scams, connect with Citizens for Tax Justice at www.ctj.org.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to Win Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Dennis Arrington, the new president of ITPEU Local 4873, says his goal for that local's nearly 14,000 service contract workers in 37 states is to robustly organize while pressing for better wages and benefits.
To organize and organize and organize. We'd like to see our workers get better salaries and get better benefits, of course, and just better health care. And we'd just like to go forward and not be going backwards.
The local is part of the Office and Professional Employees International Union and represents service workers on military bases and in federal buildings. Arrington says as the labor movement has declined in density over the years, service workers need union representation more than ever. The Department of Labor sets wages for different areas of the country and revises them each year under the Service Contract Act. Arrington says the union can increase those wages, though, by negotiating with the companies that have the contracts, and by law the government has to accept them.
When we go in and organize them, then we can raise the wages and fringe benefits on these contracts, and the government legally has to recognize the wages and fringes that we negotiate with the companies.
As wages have stagnated for workers and pensions have also declined, workers have been forced to provide for themselves in retirement with their own 401k and IRA plans, but the pressure to make ends meet is eroding worker efforts to save for retirement. Jesse Russell reports.
1 in 4 workers are tapping into their retirement plans to help pay for basic necessities. According to the Washington Post, 30% of households earning less than $50,000 a year had cashed out retirement plans to pay for necessities. Only 8% of workers earning more than $150,000 a year had been compelled to do the same. One demographic hitting their 401ks the hardest are workers in their 40s. According to the study, which was conducted by Hello Wallet, 1/3 of middle-aged workers were pulling money out of their retirement plans barely 20 years before retiring.
The North Dakota Education Association has merged with the North Dakota Public Employees Association. Known as North Dakota United, the new merged labor organization will become the state's largest public employee union with 10,000 members. AFT President Randy Weingarten says the merger strengthens the labor movement in North Dakota, bringing teachers together with workers who provide public services from roads to health programs. North Dakota United will affiliate nationally with both the AFT and the National Education Association. This newscast is made possible through underwriting support from the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Be a reader, tutor or mentor, give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge now at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live on WeAct Radio, SoFloRadio.com, RadioOrNot.com, and of course our home sweet home at TalkingLeft.com. Joining us now is the one, the only, the Richard Fowler, host of The Richard Fowler Show on WeAct Radio. You can check it out at FowlerShow.com. You can listen live on Fridays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on 1480 a.m. That's WeAct Radio in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Richard.
Morning, Danielle. How are you?
I'm good. Hopefully we didn't drag you out of bed too early this Sunday morning.
No, you didn't drag me out of bed, but I'm still in bed, but anything for Danielle and Shano.
Thank you. So we were saying before the break, Richard, that the sequester is now less than 20 days away, the March 1st deadline. And there's really some big questions about whether there's going to be any compromise. While Obama and the Democrats are hard at work and pressing the Republicans to come to some sort of a deal. The Republicans are spending their time spreading this new Obamaquester term. What are your thoughts on the whole compromise outlook?
Well, the interesting thing about the sequester is that for the first time, usually the White House and the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue, they're having private talks on how to resolve this matter. But John Boehner has really sort of come out and said he's unwilling to do anything with the president in private to deal with the sequester, and everything that he wants to do with the president should be in public and a public discourse. Problem with that being is we know that sometimes, and most of the time, public discourse is not getting anything done in Washington. So right now, because the both sides aren't talking to each other, there's a situation where we are set up for a stalemate that could lead to the sequester taking effect.
And this does not surprise me. They say they want to put it through the regular course in the House.
The public rules, I think, is what John Boehner said. Public discourse in the House.
Now, before his election for a second term as Speaker of the House, they kind of sat him down, and I have a feeling that meeting was, "Yo, John, you can't talk with the president anymore. We're only going to elect you Speaker if you do it this way." So, do you think some of that pressure is what's happening in this situation?
Oh, I think that's exactly right, Chano. I think those type of pressures, along with the fact that there's signals that John Boehner might retire. There's also sort of the idea. It also sort of leads to the idea that he's not going to talk to the president. He's going to hold the line. Republicans are going to hold the line on this one, and sadly, that's going to affect 70,000 students who will be kicked out of Head Start. It will affect over 100,000 teachers who could possibly get laid off. And that list of what will happen in this country, or that list that will happen to America if this sequester goes into effect, is just a laundry list.
Yeah, absolutely. $85 billion of sequester cuts just this year. That's 600 fewer food inspectors, 10% of air traffic controllers, 600,000 women and children losing access to the WIC program. The list just goes on and on. I mean, these cuts are devastating. And the insulting part is that the Republicans continue to say that they want more cuts, that they want, quote unquote, a balanced deal. But correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, didn't the Republicans get a ton of cuts already in the fiscal cliff deal?
That's the point. The president has already given the Republicans a lot of cuts. I mean, even before the fiscal cliff deal, the president has come to Congress and said, here, we'll make some more cuts. We'll make some more adjustments. And the sad part is that we're still having a discussion about cuts and adjustments so late in the game. And I think to add to that point, or to amplify that, and this is something that I've been really sort of wrestling with my head. I mean, I don't understand how the GOP can claim to be a party that is pro-life, and yet the pro-life starts as soon as the babies comes out the womb. Because when the baby's in the womb, they want to make sure that you can't get contraception. They want to make sure you can't go and get an abortion if that's the option you choose to make. That a woman makes with their doctor and the doctor and themselves. But at the same time, when this baby is born, they don't want the child to have WIC. They don't want the child to have Head Start. They don't want the child to have a good education. They really don't want the child to eat clean food or breathe clean air or drink clean water.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how you're pro-life at all.
I am certainly confused myself, and especially as we see, there's all this talk about gun control and immigration right now. Those are two of the biggest issues in the news, and these $85 billion worth of cuts to take place next year means a reduction of 5,000 police officers and 25% of border control agents. I mean, how can the Republicans continue to say, we need to prosecute gun criminals and we need to secure the border, while at the same time saying that these type of cuts are just fine by them? I mean, isn't that just clear hypocrisy?
Well, yeah, and that's the problem. There's this doublespeak coming from the Republican Party that, but the sad part is that I think they really think the American people aren't listening. But the good news is that the American people are listening, and they're like, this doesn't make any sense, guys. But I guess in the Republican world, only in their world, Danielle, They think that there'll be, governmental tyranny, so they'll have enough AK-47s to wipe out the Taliban, and that might solve the governmental tyranny and our sequester cuts.
Yeah, only in bizarro Republican world. I can't help but wonder, Jay Carney recently pointed this out again, but I can't help but wonder how many Americans remembered that after the fiscal cliff deal, it was John Boehner coming out saying, I'm happy because I got 98% of what I wanted, in reference to the $2.5 trillion of deficit savings that were already agreed on. Do you think that the average American, the we can call them whatever you want, the low information, the uninformed, the people who aren't paying attention to politics as you and I do you think that they will remember that?
Well, that's very, very interesting. I think that's a really good point, and I think there's a couple things here when you unpack that from the political side. I think number one, a lot of these Americans, especially those folks who live in Arkansas, or I always pick on the state of Arkansas, but Mississippi or Oklahoma, who depend upon a lot of government programs to live, and they might not think the government's involved in their life, but yet they're recipients of WIC, they're recipients of Section 8 housing, they're recipients of the TANF program, which is also welfare. This is what they choose. This is how they live their lives. When these cuts go into place and they lose those services, it's going to be prudent upon Republicans, prudent on progressives rather, to sort of go out and tell the story that, listen, we wanted to get a deal done. It was John Boehner, Eric Cantor, and your conservative member of Congress, or your Tea Party member of Congress, that stood in the way of getting this done, or stood in the way of the American people moving this country and this economy forward. And I think we're going to see that from this president is going to be a really big push to go from district to district and to take our campaign on the road and to continue to isolate some of these Tea Party Republicans who have made some of these votes that have hurt their districts so horribly that they're not really voting for the interest of the district. They're voting for the interests of people like the Koch brothers, people like Karl Rove, people like the Heritage Foundation, instead of voting for their actual constituents.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I know we're going to talk about it a little later in the show, but I'm just curious of your thoughts of the infighting between Karl Rove and the Tea Party, Steve King. Do you think that might split the Republican Party?
Oh, you're talking about the Republican bedlam. Well, I think
nice.
I think not only does it create a lot of trouble for the Republican Party, but it also creates a lot of trouble for the American people. Because this party is really going through a situation where the grass top individuals say we need to moderate, we need to have a broader conversation, and the grassroots individuals say, we need to do more of the same, and we need to hold the line on things like this. And I think we'll see. On Tuesday night during the State of the Union address, or the responses to the State of the Union address, which one will be from Marco Rubio and the Tea Party response will be from Rand Paul. I'm very curious to see how they, paint the difference between the Tea Party and the Republican Party, and how that difference is painted sort of is going to tell you what this Congress is going to look like over the next 2 years, and what the Tea Party is going to be willing to do.
That is really a great point. And we unfortunately won't get another Bobby Jindal response, which was just comedy gold for all of us. But I think Rand Paul might not disappoint as far as fodder for comedians.
Well, hopefully he looks in the right camera. At the second annual Tea Party,
that's right.
Bill Bachman talked for 20 minutes and looked in the wrong camera. So hopefully they give him the camera direction, and there's a good floor manager looking in the right camera.
I forgot all about that. That's hilarious. As I said earlier, Speaker Boehner and the other Republicans are now using this label of Obamaquester. And I'm just wondering, as we saw with the Affordable Care Act, Obama embraced Obamacare. Obama, took that name, progressives took that name and made it into something positive. Do you think that we can do the same thing with Obamaquester? Or do you think we could defeat it with some other catchy bumper sticker nickname that can be used against Republican talking points?
Well, I don't think the Obamaquester argument is going to go very far, because I don't think the American people are stupid. Unfortunately, I think the American people are smarter than the Republican Party thinks they are. And that has everything to do, and I don't understand why the Republican Party didn't get it in 2012. When they made all these arguments, they decided they were going to cut, they were going to find every way possible to suppress African Americans, to suppress Latinos, to suppress young people, to suppress old people. And these groups turned out even in bigger numbers than they would have turned out if they weren't suppressed. So I think the Republicans, their strategy is so off kilter and so off the populace of the American people that this could be detrimental to them going into 2014.
Absolutely.
And I think that is they're making a big mistake here. I think what Republicans need to do, if I were a Republican strategist, I would say, listen, guys, let's try to get one or two of these cuts and leave everything alone and try to moderate as a party. And then let's go out and let's get all these progressive issues off the table so progressives have nothing to run on in 2014, right? So you deal with gun control, you give the progressives background checks, you deal with immigration. Progressives can, on 2013, have nothing to say that they have left to do to be in power. Republicans can say, now is our time, they got all they want, and now the economy's not growing. But them digging their heels in on this sort of makes it even worse for them in 2014 because they're not going to deal with any of these issues.
Yeah.
And the American people are going to be like, well, we really don't want any of you guys here, so we're going to kick you all out of office.
I think you definitely hit the nail on the head on that, and I think that's the reasoning behind Karl Rove and this so-called conservative victory project. The last time we spoke with you, Richard, none of us knew it at the time, but the very next day you were filling in for Bill Press, and we didn't get the chance to make sure everybody tuned in. What's coming up on the Richard Fowler Show, this following week, and what should people be looking out for? Well,
thanks for bringing that up. I love filling in for Bill. Anytime Bill's not around, it's just my honor to fill in for him and sort of take his chair. I'm not sure when that's going to happen again. But beyond that, I think everybody out there listening should definitely join our new YouTube channel. We recently joined the Young Turks to continue our progressive fight on YouTube. So you can go to www.youtube.com/Fowler Show and check out all of our YouTube videos. There's some funnies there. There's some political ones there. I think recently we did one on just a couple of days ago about free the ratchetness of Free Pancake Day in America. We went to IHOP and checked it out and talked about it. We have great interviews with folks like Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, interviews with Bill Press himself, interviews from the Family USA conference, and so definitely go check out our YouTube page and subscribe. Click subscribe. That's good, and you can make sure you're part of our new YouTube world. And I got to tell you, Shane and Dan, it's been quite a journey for us. We've only been with the Young Turks for just about 2 weeks, and since then we've received almost 12,000 YouTube views from all the progressives out there. So we're really excited about it.
That's awesome, Richard. You certainly deserve it. You always do a great job, and we're always happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us this early on a Sunday. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, anything for you guys and anything for your listeners.
Oh, you're the best. Richard Fowler, everybody. Be sure to check him out every Friday on WeAct Radio, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, 1480 a.m. You, of course, can also get that online or on your smart device at TuneIn Radio.
Only the smartest devices.
And now on YouTube. We'll put that link up with the show.
We have to subscribe, too.
Yes, we didn't know. We will be subscribing as soon as we leave here today. Lots more stuff in store, lots more great guests. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, live on WeAct Radio, TalkingLeft.com, and, of course, SoFlo Radio. We'll be right back.
This is not normal.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without big brothers, big sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Breast health awareness is critical for all women, particularly African Americans, because we have an increased risk of dying from breast cancer compared to women of other backgrounds. At U of M, I'm doing research here and with women in Ghana to look for an inherited link that makes African and African American women susceptible to a more aggressive type of cancer. Finding this link, I believe, will make new treatments possible. But right now, making sure that you are properly screened is our best protection.
With experts like Dr. Lisa Newman, the University of Michigan Health System is a leader in cancer care. When you call our free Cancer Answer line at 800-865-1125, an oncology nurse will answer any questions you might have about the prevention, screening, and treatment of breast cancer and other forms of cancer. All calls are confidential. Call 800-865-1125 or visit uofmhealth.org/Cancer Answer line.
We're working to help everyone enjoy longer, healthier lives.
That's the Michigan difference.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. WeAct Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Jane Kuger of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune in to the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. WeAct Radio.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at WeAct Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast D.C.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Big thanks to Richard Fowler, host of The Richard Fowler Show, for joining us last segment. You are listening to us live on SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend Radio, WeAct Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C., RadioOrNot.com, or you may be checking out the podcast for free on iTunes or over on YouTube. You can find all the links at TalkingLeft.com. You know, Shane, 62% of Americans support allowing undocumented immigrants to stay and legally work in the United States. 62%.
That's more than 50.
Yeah, it's very...
That would be a majority.
It is definitely a majority. In addition to that, allowing undocumented people to stay and work in this country would raise $1.5 trillion for the GDP over 10 years. Despite that, the recent House immigration hearing, part of a two-panel hearing that will be followed up by the Senate later in this month, within that hearing, there was only one strong proponent supporting the push for immigration, which was San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro. Just one out of 8 witnesses. Does that surprise you?
No.
Yes.
Not in the least.
Out of 8 witnesses, 4 were openly opposed to comprehensive immigration reform. 2 were from academic backgrounds. One did not offer a clear position, and only one was strongly in favor, Julian Castro.
And at that same time, I think on that very same day, the House Republicans came out with their compromise deal.
Yes.
Their compromise deal. See, they're going to be the reasonable ones.
Exactly.
Because compromise, that's a good thing, right?
Compromise. The GOP has a really interesting way of compromising.
I think it's a compromise in between pathway to citizenship and literally physically kicking their butts and throwing them over the border.
Yes.
I mean, that's the only compromise it could possibly be. In other words, I guess their plan is you can be a permanent working underclass who'll never have citizenship.
Yes, and we're going to get into that next segment.
Oh.
Yeah. It's okay. At the hearing was Julie Myers-Wood, the former head of ICE under George Bush, who made the statement during the hearing that Obama's immigration policies could bring about another 9/11 in our country. There was Jessica Vaughn from the Center of Immigration Studies, which is a group founded by anti-immigration activist John Tanton. There was Christopher Crane, Immigration's Customs Enforcement President, ICE President, who has filed suit against the Obama administration for the so-called lenient immigration policies.
What, are you going to invite Joe Arpaio to the next one?
I think so. I think he's actually going to chair it.
Really?
Yeah, Joe Arpaio and Janet Brewer.
And Steven Seagal.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Tettelbaum, fellow Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, who is a long-documented skeptic of increased legal immigration. He doesn't just oppose the pathway to citizenship or, keeping families together. That's not, bad enough for him. We can't even allow legal immigration in this country, if you ask Michael Tettelbaum. These are the people who are put in charge of giving the argument of why we need legal immigration in this country, why we need
how to craft some kind of compromise.
Exactly, why we need a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million, probably more, undocumented immigrants working in this country. And there's a big uproar now as these people and the House Republicans no longer even favor a path to citizenship. The 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country should simply just stay here and work without ever hoping to be part of this country. Really makes you shake your head. We're going to get into that and a whole bunch more in just a few minutes here on Talking Left. You're listening to Danielle and Shano. We'll be right back, so stick around.
There you have it. News has never been softer. It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's Tuesday, February 5, 2013.
Will we sit on the sidelines and fall behind? Or will we play to win the clean energy race?
Energy Secretary Stephen Chu steps down.
High gas prices are like a tax straight out of your paycheck.
Record high gas prices mean big oil profits. U.S. carbon emissions fall. Plus,
we could have saved 500 million bottles on game day alone.
The Super Bowl ad you didn't get to see.
All of that and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Well, as is obvious to the viewers at home, we have a power outage here at the Superdome.
Oh, great. Thanks, Obama. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Des, the lights went out in the middle of the Super Bowl. I don't really know what happened, but I'm pretty sure it's got to be Barack Obama's fault.
Well, yeah, that is essentially what the right-wing media is saying. It was the night the lights went out in NOLA. Officials still don't know why the power went out in half of the Superdome in New Orleans on Sunday, only that sensors at the dome detected an anomaly that tripped a breaker. But the crack right-wing investigative media was on it. On Twitter and elsewhere, they blamed everything from Obama to new energy-efficient LED lights that were installed on the exterior of the dome. except the power outage was inside the dome, while the new LED lights outside the dome remained on. The Super Bowl also helped save energy. It seems counterintuitive, but electricity consumption actually falls during the game. According to a new analysis, electricity use during last year's game dropped an estimated 7% across the whole country. That's because people tend to watch the game in groups, meaning energy consumption is concentrated in fewer places. Too bad we can't play the Super Bowl weekly, huh? And one Super Bowl commercial has gained notoriety for being rejected by network CBS. Now, CBS won't comment on why it rejected the ad by at-home soda maker SodaStream, but critics say it might be because SodaStream took aim at the game's sponsors, Coke and Pepsi, and directly criticized the waste generated by hundreds of millions of discarded plastic soft drink bottles.
With SodaStream, we could have saved 500 million bottles on game day alone.
If it was because Coke and Pepsi were also both seen in the ad, seems a bit hypocritical. We see ads from Coke and Pepsi during the Super Bowl all the time. Coke shows Pepsi, Pepsi shows Coke, but I guess it's a two-party duopoly when it comes to the cola wars.
Yeah, critics have called on CBS to come clean and explain their standards. The controversy, though, has boosted the ad anyway with millions of online views.
Good.
It's not enough for our country to invent clean energy technologies. We have to make them and we have to use them. Invented in America, made in America, and sold around the world. That's how we'll create good jobs and lead in the 21st century.
That was Energy Secretary Stephen Chu in 2011. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist has announced he will step down. As Secretary of Energy, he oversaw investment in the nation's domestic renewable energy industry, including a doubling of renewable energy projects across the country on public lands in just 4 years. In his departure letter to employees, Chu was blunt on the importance of clean energy to the economy and taking action on climate change, saying, quote, "Ultimately, we have a moral responsibility to the most innocent victims of adverse climate change. Those who will suffer the most are the people who are the most innocent, the world's poorest citizens, and those yet to be born." Unfortunately, the White House kept Chu from being this blunt about climate change during his term.
All of these energy-related officials who are leaving seem to be leaving behind these letters on the way out to say, by the way, you better do something about climate change.
But the good news is Chu's programs are already delivering. Carbon dioxide emissions in the United States have fallen to their lowest levels since 1994.
Why?
That's according to a new report by Bloomberg New Energy Finance. They say that emissions fell due to the doubling of renewable energy installations in just 4 years, plus utilities dropping dirty coal and switching to cheap natural gas because of fracking, and from energy efficiency upgrades to commercial buildings. Now, the U.S. is now more than halfway towards Obama's target of cutting emissions by 17% below 2005 levels, and that's in spite of Republican obstruction in Congress.
And in spite of the inability to pass a cap-and-trade bill over the past 5 years, which, I should remind you, Republicans used to favor.
Yep. Finally, poor big oil. 2012 wasn't a record year for oil profits.
Snarky of you.
Yes, but it wasn't too shabby. Big oil earned well over $100 billion in pure profit in 2012, helped out by consumers who paid record high gas prices at the pump, despite a drilling boom in the U.S. that the right-wing media said would lower gas prices.
And they were able to make those kind of profits even after canceling the welfare entitlements that we give to them?
Oh, wait, that's right. We didn't. We still give them $4 billion a year in subsidies and tax breaks.
Lucky them. And lucky you. You can check out that story and the ones we couldn't get to today at our website, greennews.bradblog.com. Remember, you can download us anytime via iTunes, listen to us on your mobile device via TuneIn or the Stitcher Radio app. Find us and like us on the Facebook, and follow us 24/7 on the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live here on WeAct Radio, SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend Radio, and RadioOrNot.com. Thanks so much for spending your morning with us. So before the break, we were talking about how the House immigration hearing was stacked with people who didn't want any legal immigration or didn't want to allow the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country access to citizenship. And it turns out that more Republicans are picking up this meme.
Yeah, the day they rolled it out, we saw it everywhere in terms of watching and listening to the right-wing entertainers.
Exactly. This is actually stark contrast with the leader on the Republican side in the immigration debate, Marco Rubio, who says that immigrants who register with the government and receive probationary status should be allowed to apply for a green card after a substantial period of time. So even Marco Rubio understands the importance.
Cantor.
Yes, understands the importance of allowing these people to eventually become citizens. But we saw it first at the actual House immigration hearing. It started with Representative Lamar Smith, a Republican of Texas. While interviewing Mayor Julian Castro of San Antonio, he said, quote, "Do you see any compromise between the current status quo and a path to citizenship?" I thought the path to citizenship was the compromise. You know, this is
not
not
de facto amnesty, which is what we have right now.
Right.
They're actually going further to the other side of saying, you know, right now we have amnesty.
Right. And I thought that was the compromise. I mean, this is not here, we know you're here, here's your green card, you're a citizen. This is still a very long and ridiculous process in which some people can't become citizens, even if they do everything by the book, for sometimes 12 to 15 years, which is ridiculous. This is after fees are paid and quote-unquote back taxes, which is a bunch of horse malarkey. And we saw that word, Shane, that word that you just mentioned.
As soon as they trot out the word amnesty, the debate will shut down.
Right. We saw that word used in the hearing itself. Spencer Baucus, Republican of Alabama, said, when you take comprehensive, then we're dealing with certain issues like full citizenship. And whatever we disagree on, I think we would agree that that's a more toxic and contentious issue, granting full amnesty.
So he's not only using the word amnesty, he's equating it to a pathway to citizenship.
Exactly.
So therefore, the right wing goes, nah, the alarms go off, the bells, oh no, we can't do that.
Right.
But they do want to say, okay, but you can work here if you want.
Exactly.
You can work here for no. You can be a downward force on wages because corporations that we're beholden to, they love that.
Right. And we saw it in that hearing, and now we're seeing it spoken about by other Republicans. Most recently, Representative Raul Labrador has come out against providing any type of pathway to citizenship for the nation's 11 million undocumented immigrants. In an interview with NPR, Labrador said, the people that came here illegally knowing, I don't think they should have a pathway to citizenship. If you knowingly violated our law, you violated our sovereignty. I think we should normalize your status, but we should not give you a pathway to citizenship.
There's the word they want to use, normalize.
Right. I think this is a big giveaway to, agribusiness and corporations that use these undocumented immigrants essentially as serfs, as the underclass in America.
And they'd like that to be permanent. And by the way, we don't want you to be able to vote.
Exactly.
Because we get our butts kicked when we let,
and
workers vote.
It's really absurd because the economic benefits of naturalization, of becoming a citizen, are actually far more beneficial to our nation than just giving somebody a work visa. A naturalized immigrant earns between 5.6% and 7.2% within just the first 2 years of becoming a citizen.
That's what they don't want, though.
Exactly. Researchers found that if even half of those eligible to become citizens actually do so, it would add $21 billion to $45 billion to the U.S. economy over 10 years.
Because people would get paid more, they'd spend that money, and then there'd be a money multiplier effect instead of
Exactly.
corporations just keeping it in the Caymans.
Exactly. So the question is, why? You know, obviously there's the issue of they don't want these people to vote. They know that they need to garner Latino support because they got creamed in the 2012 election. They got something like less than 10%, I believe, of the Latino vote.
I think it was in the mid-20s to 30.
Oh, I thought it was worse
But they
than
need
that.
to be above 40, they've calculated at this point.
All right. So, but they essentially lost nearly the entire Latino vote.
Yes.
They know they have to do something. However, I don't think they realize how insulting this is not only to the hardworking men and women who are living here undocumented, but also their family members, relatives, and friends who may already be legal citizens and may be eligible to vote. This is just a slap in the face. According to, well, let me find my quote here. According to FAIR, Federation American Immigration Reform, 51% of people working in the farm industry, of agribusinesses employers, are already unauthorized immigrants. This is after the 1980s Reagan bill called the Guest Worker Program that was supposed to provide protections and still make it possible for factory farms to hire low-wage, undocumented people. But agribusiness just avoids any kind of rules. There's such limited rules in the guest worker program. They would have a minimum wage guarantee, which is below our federal minimum wage.
What?
Yes, minimum wage, housing that meets an acceptable standard for the duration of the contract, and a guarantee that the workers be paid 3/4 of their salary if the season ends early. There's no disability protections. There's no workman comp protections. It's a very stripped-down bill. But yet agribusiness has paid and lobbied to unburden themselves with such a pitiful attempt at protection. So who might be behind?
Farmer.
Exactly. Who may be behind?
Agro-farmer. Huge mega business.
Right. Who may be behind this big push to not allow them to become citizens?
It's not Paul Harvey, I know that.
It's not Paul Harvey, yes. And they've gotten away with this over the years because, and many of us are familiar with these threats that, oh, Americans don't want to do the job. If you guarantee these people a higher wage, the pool of cheap labor will dry up in this country. Or we've heard that paying these people more will lead to food prices rising on American consumers.
Which is fine by me, so long as wages go up.
But
Remember, we've talked
those
about this before. Inflation's a good thing,
Right.
so long as wages inflate too.
We've heard those arguments time and time again over
Right.
the years.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, in fact, neither of them are true.
Oh, this
Yes.
one I didn't know.
Yes. Essentially, you could pay somebody a reasonably living wage, and it wouldn't really affect prices. A 2011 report by the Economic Policy Institute found that an increase in farm workers' wages of 40%,
That's a significant raise.
Would result in a household spending increase to $16 a year to the American consumer.
I would imagine that the fluctuation in gas prices is a lot higher. It has a much bigger impact.
Yeah, $16 a
food
year.
prices, droughts, global climate change.
Yeah.
So why don't we just go with the working wage thing too?
Exactly. And if you were to raise those wages, don't you think more people would be willing to work those jobs?
Sure.
Not to mention that, I'm sorry, that's just a straw man argument.
And be able to afford the extra $16 a year.
Yes. What do you know?
Think about it.
Yeah. During this period when farm workers have been paid incredibly low wages, have been treated like serfs, have been just, not even given any dignity, agriculture industry has recorded an 80% increase in annual profits. 80%. So they're raking in the dough, spending plenty of money to lobby Congress to get rid of these very minimum reforms, let alone allow these 11 million people to become citizens.
And vote.
Yet they're still making plenty of money. kind of makes you wonder how much we should be putting up with just the regular price increases at the supermarket.
I also think they're worried about them unionizing.
Ooh.
How about that?
Could be.
Because non-citizens certainly cannot unionize.
Well, I think this so-called removal of the path to citizenship, it's creating a permanent underclass in this country.
And that also has macroeconomic pressures on wages overall.
Right.
In terms of forcing them down, because there's a supply and demand issue. If you flood the supply with cheap labor, employers can get employees for less money, and that moves the whole entire scale down. At least for the working class.
Right.
That's why a lot of the union leaders are very upset at even the pathway to citizenship in terms of jobs that Americans wouldn't do. Well, they won't do it for less than minimum wage because they can't live on it.
And nobody should.
No.
That's the problem. That's the whole problem here. And what Republicans are trying to do essentially is just a giveaway to corporations and big business like agribusiness that want to be able to continue to pay people minimum wage or less with very little, if any, protections on them, no access to social safety nets.
So the solution is take those, and we welcome them when we first talked about this.
You're darn right.
The Republicans who are for a pathway to citizenship, a reasonable one, the Rubios, and now, believe it or not, Eric Cantor, work with them, because Democrats have wanted this all along. To say that Obama's they were trying to float that Obama was in the way and Rubio's coming to the rescue, and
I love when they played the speeches of Obama then and now back to back.
Exactly the same.
Yeah,
he's been for this for a very long time. Democrats have been for this for a very long time. It was the right wing radio that just torpedoed McCain when in the Senate a couple of years back during the Bush administration.
Right.
When they tried to do comprehensive immigration reform, it was torpedoed. So find those reasonable Republicans. I know reasonable Republicans don't often collide in the same sentence, but on this I think we can find them. Get them together with the Democrats, put a bill through. Who cares what the crazy say? Let them be crazy.
Well,
crazy is as crazy does.
The Democrats, for many of us progressives, like Obama, aren't even fighting enough to protect these people. The deportations are up higher than they've ever been. There's been more deportations than every other U.S. president, under every U.S. president combined. So this is all a gigantic straw man argument. We cannot let the Republicans hold these 11 million people hostage and guarantee them a life of slavery and indentured servitude just to benefit big business. It's simply unacceptable in the day and age that we live in this country.
There are fellow human beings who deserve a living wage.
Absolutely.
And they deserve to be able to live freely in our society, and we should thank them.
Yes.
Thank you for working.
Guess what? If we want to be the best country in the world, if we want people, smart, talented people to actually want to come here and become citizens in this country, perhaps we need to start caring for the people who are already here. Just saying. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Lots more in store today. Still 3 more big guests coming up, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is going to be fun. It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen, investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from BradBlog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of BradBlog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
You're listening to
and watching
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio.
Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
It's a redefining of the issue of not just the fact that, oh, it's my fault, I need to go buy a Prius. I should get an electric car. No, it's my fault for not stopping car culture as a whole. We don't need cars. I should have far greater technology right now than the internal combustion engine. It's 100-year-old technology.
Where is my jetpack?
Exactly. But you get the point. The issue is far larger than just recycling or driving a hybrid. It's stopping the manufacturing of these systems, these industries. They need to stop. We will never have national health care guaranteed as a right for all as long as we have insurance companies that make money off of us. So the insurance companies need to go away. We don't need insurance companies. We need health care. It's the whole health insurance reform. What a lie that is, because we need health care reform. And the list goes on. So it's redefining the issue and redefining the argument.
Filterfreeradio.com.
Arr, you mateys. Welcome to the ocean. I've sailed the seven seas 100 times and found something I like even more than me treasure. 'Tis the ocean, beautiful and clear. Right now I be sailing over the Great Barrier Reef. It just shivers me timbers thinking of all the fish and coral below me. Wait, what's that floating by? A plastic bag! By Blackbeard's eye patch, that's disgusting. Why did you know that many of these things come from folks throwing them carelessly on the ground? It be true. Lend us a hand by always recycling and disposing of your trash properly. Boys, get the plank ready. Somebody's got to dive in and get that bag. Any volunteers? Cannons. All right, fine. I'll do it myself. Cannonball! Find out what you can do to help keep the oceans healthy at keepoceansclean.org. Brought to you by the Keep Oceans Clean Alliance and the Ad Council.
Hey! Are you living in a progressive talk void? If so, be sure to visit leftwingradiostations.com. The state-by-state listing is a quick and easy way to find any left-wing talk radio station across America, from sea to shining sea. Your progressive talk nirvana is only a click away at leftwingradiostations.com. Be sure to like Left-Wing Radio Stations on Facebook and share it with your friends. leftwingradiostations.com. United we stand.
SoFloRadio.com remains on the air with free archives thanks to the support of our listeners. Help keep us on the air by clicking the donate button on SoFloRadio.com. And thank you for your generous support.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
That's right. Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live on SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend Radio, and WeAct Radio. So the big hearing this week, we were just talking about the immigration hearing.
John McCain was just on the Sunday morning shows on. I know that's not
yeah,
news.
Seriously, that's news?
That is news. But Think Progress reports that he was defending the immigration bill. Comprehensive immigration.
That includes
pathway to
good for him. Yes. Good for him.
Wallace pulled out isn't that in amnesties? Well, what are you going to do with them? Come on. And it's a pathway to citizenship. It's pretty dang tough.
Yeah,
so,
it's
whippersnappers, shut
and
up.
It's still let's just be honest. It's still completely I don't know what the right word is, reliant on some invisible finish line of securing the borders that's decided upon by Rick Perry and Jan Brewer. So
a goalpost which we've been moved so many times.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't even like the original bill, much less their compromise.
Exactly. But that was not the only hearing people are talking about this week.
A lot of hearings this week.
It's been like hearing palooza.
Yeah.
Recently.
Clinton last week, Panetta this week, and we also had
John Brennan.
How about that?
Yes, John Brennan in his confirmation hearing to be the director of the CIA.
Guy who's not a real fan of the Fourth Amendment, yet wants to be the top spy. Great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Fantastic. I don't need no stinking constitution. I'm a spy.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yes, the creator of the Department of Justice memo supposedly justifying the use of drones and the killing of innocent civilians, including American citizens overseas in countries we are not at war with. This is a big fight even within the progressive and democratic sides of the fence. There are some people out there saying that he's our president and we should just stick with him. And there are many of us saying that this is against the Constitution, regardless of whether or not someone's an American citizen, that we have the right to due process. We have the right to a trial. And even then, hey, many of us are against the death penalty. And I would say this falls in that court. One of the groups that has been the most outspoken against drone warfare and against the targeted killings of Americans and other citizens throughout the world is Code Pink. And like they seem to do with every big hearing, every big issue recently, they've done it with the NRA and so many more events, they protested the heck out of the CIA hearing, and I say we owe them all a big applause. Yes, wild applause too. All right. Code Pink stood up 5 times during the CIA nomination hearing of John Brennan, to the point where Dianne Feinstein had to pause the hearing, empty the chamber, and clear the chamber. Guess we're not talking about the NRA hearing. And readmit
everyone
viewers back in.
If you're not, unless you're wearing pink, probably.
Yeah. I don't know how they...
How do you discern?
Right. Code Pink seems to get in everywhere. I don't understand it, how they pull it off, but it's awesome.
Well, you can't make a rule saying you can't. This is an open hearing, but if you're wearing pink, you can't. I mean, it would be ridiculous. You know, that we do have the ability. I understand you have to. There are rules and decorum and things like that, which they use. They use those rules against them to interrupt to get their point across, so they get the on the news and things like that, and bring the issues to the forefront. But the First Amendment, you have the right to petition your government.
Right.
One of the ones we don't talk about a whole lot, but you do have the right to petition your government. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're doing it quite well. In fact, one protester had up a sign stating Brennan equals drone killing. Another yelled out that she was protesting on behalf of mothers in Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia. They really put the word out and reminded people that you can justify it. You could say few civilians were being killed, but you can't say that this isn't, murder, that this isn't execution, whichever word you want to use. It will be very interesting to see how this plays out, because even in the Democratic Party, there is a major divide on this issue. And I know many progressives are very upset about it.
Hey, when our president messes up, and I think he has, he's in a weird position. I mean, he's kind of in a Bush position of defending incredibly vast war powers.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to be in it, so why don't we knock it off?
Yeah, and we're going to talk to one of the loudest voices in such a great way, talking about why this is wrong and why we need to stop it. Coming up next, Lee Camp, activist, comedian, and creator of the Moments of Clarity podcast, which you hear on this show as well as so many others. And go to his site, because there's versions that aren't FCC compliant. They're a lot more fun. LeeCamp.net. We're going to be talking to him next about the drone program and so much more. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be right back after this break.
Confound it. You're right. It's brilliant.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Big Ag has a big problem, but has come up with a neat solution. The problem is that the meat, eggs, and dairy that are sold to us as, quote, wholesome foodstuffs by such giants as Tyson, Smithfield, and Borden are actually produced in mammoth, mega-messy, monstrous factory farms. Known by the baleful industrial acronym CAFO, these confined animal feeding operations amount to animal concentration camps. They cram thousands of cows, pigs, chickens, and other pastoral creatures into tortuously tiny cages enclosed in metal prison-like buildings. The animals never see the light of day, they're routinely dosed with antibiotics and growth hormones, and they're frequently ravaged by epidemic diseases. In turn, we human animals suffer from widespread salmonella, E. coli, and other food contaminants that are an inevitable byproduct of CAFO production, as well as suffering from the gross air and water pollution caused by the unbelievable mass of manure coming out of these animal factories. It's ugly in there, but such a reckless system produces big corporate profits, so they want to keep the uglies a secret from consumers. Problem is, in this age of watchdogs and whistleblowers with cell phone cameras and direct access to the public through YouTube, there's been a spate of barf-inducing exposés. But problem solved. Big Ag's lawyers and lobbyists have simply coughed up a nasty legalistic hairball called the Animal and Ecological Terrorism Act. Yes, it's an ag-gag bill that criminalizes use of cameras to expose the horrors inside CAFOs and prosecutes participants as terrorists. This is Jim Hightower saying you'd think such a repressive act would gag a legislature, but Iowa, Missouri, and Utah have already passed it, and at least 10 other states are considering it. To keep up and fight back, go to organicconsumers.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
I want the UAW to be the yeast in building a new social justice movement in America.
United Auto Workers President Bob King. King told 1,500 UAW delegates at the union's legislative conference in Washington, D.C., that to win economic and social justice for working people in America, a powerful new movement must be forged based on direct action and the solidarity of a broad coalition.
The labor movement is not strong enough by ourselves. The only way we win for our membership the social justice that they deserve is if we build these broad coalitions and a new movement for social and economic justice. We need our sisters and brothers in the civil rights movement. We need our sisters in the women's movement. We need our brothers and sisters in the immigrant rights community. We need our brothers and sisters in the LGBT community. We need our sisters and brothers in the environmental community. We need our sisters and brothers in the faith community.
King said the UAW has a history of social justice vision, activism, and international solidarity. He said the union wants to build and help sustain a new social movement while organizing much more of the auto industry in a bid to reverse the slide of both the UAW and the middle class in America. King said UAW history proves that direct action protest is a powerful tactic and must be used along with government power to demand justice for working people.
We kept demonstrating, we kept rallying, we kept striking, we kept marching, and we built the middle class in America. African Americans would not be voting. African Americans would not have made the progress if there was not a civil rights movement. If Dr. King did not leave marches, if we didn't get hosed and have the dogs put on us, get knocked down with fire hoses, there would not have been the progress made that was made for human rights and civil rights. Women in America would not have the right to vote if it was not for the women's suffrage movement. There were rallies, there were demonstrations like the civil rights, there were sit-ins. Remember, the leaders of it got arrested, thrown in jail, they went on a hunger strike, they tried to force feed them. Think of the great courage. It was built on a movement and built on a commitment to nonviolent direct action. We want a government that serves working families in America. We want a government that gives us safe streets. We want a government that rebuilds our roads, our infrastructure. We want a government that rebuilds our power grid system. We don't want to destroy government. That's what they want. We want a government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
When I have an
asthma attack, I feel scared. It's kind of like an elephant is on my chest. I feel like I'm choking. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital.
You know how to react to their asthma attacks. Here's how to prevent them. Call 1-866-NO-ATTACKS. Visit www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many.
I feel like a fish with no water.
Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yes, you are. Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Joining us now is someone we always love speaking to, the amazing, brilliant comedian, activist, producer of Moments of Clarity podcast, and more. You can find it all at leecamp.net. Good morning, Lee Camp.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are doing great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I don't know if you always enjoy talking to me.
We do.
97% of the time.
Hopefully you are not snowed in up there in your neck of the woods.
I'm not snowed in. There is a lot of snow, but I'm doing fine.
Good. No loss of power or any of that, right?
No, it's completely different here than when it was growing up in Richmond, Virginia. It was like, 12 flakes and the city would shut down for a week.
Yeah,
That's like D.C. too.
Yeah, pretty much same thing here in D.C. If there's like even a talk of snow, the roads are empty. Nobody's in D.C.
Or there's complete gridlock.
Yes, exactly. But that is certainly not why we asked you to join us this morning. So, of course, we all witnessed this Brennan hearing this week, and the so-called justification for the targeted killing of Americans overseas. And there's so many questions. I think that the hearing actually created more questions than it answered. What are your thoughts on this so-called justification memo from the DOJ that was released recently?
Well, there's so much going on here that's like just disgusting and preposterous. I mean, watching the Brennan hearing was like, watching clowns dance around and put each other on each other's shoulders. It was like it was just a big like, hey, we're going to pretend to ask you questions, and if you don't answer them, we'll just go on to the next one because we want to do whatever is right for you. That's
pretty much
it's supposed to work.
Yeah. I was under the impression, and I think as most people, that the DOJ was supposed to provide senators with more information, provide them the so-called legal justification for this entire drone program. Yet when we heard Dianne Feinstein speak on that, all she said was, well, to paraphrase, I saw proof that not too many civilians died. Does that, for you, address any of the justifications and whether or not this program is legal?
Well, first of all, it's just not true.
Yes.
So there's that.
That factual thing got in the way there.
Many civilians have died, and if you talk to the better journalists on this, like Jeremy Scahill, he can just reel off a list of names as long as his arms of civilians and families and wedding parties that have been decimated, and furthermore, we have the fact that they decided too many civilians were dying, so they changed the definition of the word civilian. So clearly there was some trepidation over civilians dying, and so the answer was not to stop killing civilians, it was to change the definition they changed it so that anybody of military age in a target area is a combatant.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. That is astonishing.
Yeah. So that means you don't even have to know you're fighting. You could be 95 years old trying to figure out how to put falafel in your mouth, and you're a warrior. But on top of that, it's like, if you change the definition of a word, doesn't that mean it applies to us too? Meaning,
it does.
If you're standing near a Marine in an airport, you just thought you were an accountant sitting there working on Cinnabon number 7 and Love Handle number 4, but no, you're a warrior getting ready to wage battle with your Cinnabon of glory.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest test and the biggest true way to view any action is how would you feel as an individual if that action was done onto you? You know, if you're going to call somebody a name, if you're going to, punch somebody in the face, you might want to consider how you would feel if the same thing was happening to you. And if we look at the drone program in that context and say, how would we feel if another country was doing that? I think it really highlights just how outrageous this whole program is. I mean, wouldn't you agree that that's the perspective?
You think we're actually going to take under consideration the thesis of the Bible?
Do unto others? Bomb unto others as they would bomb unto us.
Yes.
How crazy would that be? But yeah, and then you also mentioned the assassination of American citizens, and it's just this thing where people who I feel like don't do any research, like most of America that doesn't do more research than the media will give them, think, oh, well, the government will, that just means they'll bomb the people we don't like that are terrorists or whatever. It's like, you have to think, what if this power were in the hands of someone you didn't like? Even if you do love Obama, even if you got your Obama poster in your room, this power then goes on to other presidents, other executives. And, it's the same with the indefinite detention in NDAA. I went to the panel the other night with Chris Hedges and Michael Moore and Daniel Ellsberg. And, they're in court right now. Well, not Michael Moore, but Chris Hedges in court right now fighting the indefinite detention and, saying that he, as a journalist, he could be locked away forever for consorting with terrorist entities when he's just trying to interview them. I mean, they said they made a list of all the terrorist the entities he's had interviews with that are considered terrorist groups, and it's like 17. So, you're putting journalists alone in a place where they could be locked away forever without a trial, which is let
alone locked away. But I mean, based on our whole conversation, they could also be attacked by a drone if they happen to be in another country.
Yeah, assassinated by on the kill list.
Right.
But the whole don't lock people away without a trial or charges. I mentioned the thesis of the Bible. I think that's the thesis of the Constitution, is not to lock people away without a trial and charges.
Yeah, due process and right to an attorney, right to a fair trial. It's mentioned a few times in there. The funny part for me, I also wanted to get to your Martin Luther King story, but just before we do.
Speaking of assassination of American citizens.
Exactly. Just before we do, I think it's kind of laughable. One of the new suggestions of a possible way to rein in the drone program is to make the Obama administration use a FISA court, a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, because they've been so great at protecting all of our civil liberties as till now. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it would probably just be a show, but at least it'd be better than what we've got now. I mean, oversight is so important, and whether it's Wall Street or drone attacks or any other area of the government and our economy, it's oversight and regulation are usually what keep these things in check. And having people regulate themselves never seems to work out very well in the long run.
In a court that's secret by definition will not work.
Yeah.
Right.
Just all there is to it.
But please tell us about Martin Luther King. You've got some news.
Some breaking news from over 13 years ago. I found out that like 2 years ago, I was told that there was a civil trial, the only trial ever involving Martin Luther King's assassination, and they found they found government agencies. I don't know what the civil term is, culpable or responsible or something for the wrongful death of Martin Luther King. So, basically found them responsible. And another man named Jowers, who owned the grill that is where the shot was fired from. And so I found out about like 2 years ago, and I was kind of floored by like, how is it, I read a lot of crap. How is it I've gone this long with never hearing that there was a trial that found the government culpable for Martin Luther King's death? And so I kind of put a Twitter post or something, and it seemed like not that many people knew, and so I then did a video on it, and it's gotten whatever 35,000 views.
I'd never heard it.
I had not heard that at all until see what I learned from Moments of Clarity.
Yeah, and then the photo I created, Facebook photo I created to go with it, got hundreds of thousands of views, and it's because people don't know, and it's because the media didn't cover it. Our media is just a pile of turds, and so it's just mind blowing that this could go on, and that no one here, it just gets swept under the rug. Let's not talk about the dirty laundry of our government from 30 years ago.
Well, I find that it's almost related. I mean, outside of some on the progressive side, we haven't heard about the drone program for pretty much the decade it's been going on. The average American is not sitting around talking about this until maybe this week when this memo came out. And I feel like the two are on the same line there. Are people just not concerned about our Constitution and what's being done to destroy it?
Right, and the memo is their quote-unquote justification for being able to kill American citizens. And up until it was leaked, a week ago, they said, oh, well, we can't show it to you. You can't show us the reason you're allowed to do something that sounds incredibly illegal to us, incredibly unconstitutional to us. And, it's the same with the Martin Luther King evidence. They were like, oh, well, we have evidence against James Earl Ray. We can't really show it to you. We wiped the entire scene. I mean, they cut down all the bushes and got rid of any evidence that was behind the grill where the shots were fired. And so basically no one could see any reason that they believed that. They were just like, here, believe this and go on with your lives.
You think now that the public is talking about it, that there'll be any pushback, any reining in of the drone program, just in your personal opinion?
No, not unless people, unless people stand up. I mean, it all comes down to how much, Obama loves to say, and past presidents have said this too, if you want these things done, if you want these good things done, make me do it. That's, well, make me do it. And that's their way of saying, I'm going to try and get away with everything I can. And because it's not just make me do good things, it's also make me not do bad things. And so basically it depends on the pushback. It depends on how many marches in the streets you see, and how many have we seen over drones? Not enough.
And it depends on how much people are paying attention to the Moment of Clarity podcast. Lee, you were always very busy. Where can people come and check you out next?
I'm performing a lot in New York City. I do have a show in Boston coming up. If people want to go to leecamp.net/schedule, I'm about to put that one on there. It'll be March 22nd in Boston. And then I'm doing a tour of the UK in May. But I have a new Moment of Clarity show that is a little bigger, a web show rather than just the rants.
Oh, cool.
It should be a lot of fun. We've already filmed it. It'll be coming out in I'd say roughly 10 days, and if people just keep track at leecamp.net or youtube.com/leecamp and the number 2, they will find it.
Well, that's awesome, and as always, we'll post the show, but we will definitely be checking it out because it's one of our favorite things to watch and listen and, as proven recently, learn from. So thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you. And thank you both for doing what you do.
Absolutely. Have a great day. And Lee Camp, everybody, leecamp.net. Always somebody we really enjoy speaking with, speaks the truth.
And in this break, a lot of times we'll play ads, but we're actually going to play Lee Camp's Moment of Clarity on the Dr. King.
Yeah, so everybody will know what we're talking about.
You're going to hear it right now.
Yeah, so don't go anywhere during this break. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Lots more in store. Stick around.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Follow like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending. We got no plans.
This is your Moment of Clarity from leecamp.net. I got to admit, today's episode makes me feel weird.
It's kind of bizarre to feel like you're announcing major breaking news that should change everything people know about the United States, and that news is 13 years old. Over 13 years ago, the only trial ever held concerning the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. was concluded. And no, it wasn't done in someone's basement under the cover of tinfoil hats. There wasn't anyone with the word Illuminati carved into their forehead. And no, this wasn't an issue of Marvel Comics' Bizarro World, where Spider-Man is a gay Latino man, and Superman is a mustachioed dude who refuses to fight crime on the Sabbath. This was a real, live trial between the King family and the conspirators who killed Martin Luther King. This was real. In 1999, a jury found U.S. government agencies guilty of assassinating MLK on a balcony in Memphis in 1968. After hearing from 70 witnesses, including Lloyd Jowers, who owned Jim's Grill, from which the shot was fired, and assisted the sniper, the jury took less than an hour to decide that 1. Multiple government agencies were responsible for the murder. 2. James Earl Ray, the man who we've always been told pulled the trigger, had nothing to do with it. And 3. The U.S. media is a stain on the soul of this country, a tarnish so deep and dark it makes the Bermuda Triangle look like a happy day on the slip and slide. James Earl Ray only signed a confession because he was told it was the only way he could get a trial. Once he realized he would not get a trial, he recanted his confession and maintained his innocence to his death. Even Coretta Scott King and the King family said he was innocent. On the other hand, the 20th Special Forces Group was shown to have a sniper team at the location of King's murder. This is significant because snipers are good at putting bullets through people from a large distance away. It just so happens that Martin Luther King had a bullet go through him from a large distance away. What are the odds? Something tells me the 8-man sniper team wasn't at Jim's Grill that day for the cooking. Jim's Grill. Our barbecue ribs are trigger finger looking good. So you're telling me, under U.S. law, the U.S. government has been found to have assassinated one of the 10 most courageous, most beloved American leaders, and most people in this country still don't know it? I can't turn on a TV without hearing that Lance Armstrong is guilty of using drugs, or Kristen Stewart is guilty of sleeping with a guy, or Manti Te'o is guilty of believing a Skype video of a stack of clothing is a real live girlfriend. Todd Aiken's guilty of believing God rapes women, and Mel Gibson hates Jews, and Lindsay Lohan said blinkety blue. Everybody in this country knows every step, breath, spasm, and orgasm that involves Justin Bieber, Dan Marino, and Anthony Weiner. Can't avoid it. Can't not know it even if you try. Yet this government, our own government, was found guilty in a court of law of straight up murdering a peaceful disobedience icon, a legend who led the American people out of the Dark Ages, a modern day prophet, number 5 on the list of greatest Americans behind only George Washington, Ben Franklin, Carrie Underwood, and Balky from Perfect Strangers. The government was found guilty by a jury in 1999, and we never heard a word of it, never heard a sound. To this day, you're more likely to see a news anchor breastfeed an adult man in a diaper live on the news at 5 than you are to see them mention the government's assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. In the words of Gandhi, what the is going on around here? And that is your breaking holy how could this happen news from 13 years ago. And that's your moment of clarity. In the description below, you'll find links if you'd like to read more about this topic. Also, help Moment of Clarity spread. If you're on Twitter, you can just go to donateyouraccount.com/LeeCamp, and you will be able to sign up to donate just 1 tweet per day or per week to Moment of Clarity. You don't lose control of your account. It doesn't cost anything. It's quick and easy and self-explanatory, and it'll be a huge tool to help Moment of Clarity grow. Thanks. Keep fighting.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Big thanks to Lee Camp and an awesome moment of clarity there. Just stuff that most people certainly haven't heard. LeeCamp.net, you can check it out. And I wish I had seen this when he was on. Somebody tweeted me, John G40, tweeted me a link to Lee Camp's produced video, It's Viral, an online campaign to overturn Citizens United.
Yes.
I just retweeted
we talked
it.
about it maybe 2 times ago he was on here, but yes, remind
absolutely.
everyone.
I did retweet it. You can find it over on my Twitter account at LeftNeckChick, and we'll put the link up with the blog post after the show. So be sure to spread that around. That would be the biggest impact to our society to get the money out of politics. It really is the root of so much of the evil. So I don't think talking about news, anybody who listened to Lee Camp's last moment of clarity that we just heard, it's hard these days to avoid news on a subject if you don't want to know it. It's pretty much everywhere. And the recent story that has been plastered over every newspaper and media outlet is that of Christopher Jordan Dorner, the fugitive ex-cop that is accused of killing several people, including the 28-year-old daughter of a former LAPD captain, and essentially starting a manhunt for him all through the California
Southern
state.
California.
Yeah.
I think it's Big Bear right now. Is where
Yes. That's the last report of where he may be hiding. Well, what most people wouldn't believe, and it's shocking, I think, still to both of us.
Yeah. Well, not so much so. We talk about it in the next segment.
Yeah, we're going to really get into this in the next segment, but you wouldn't believe, except that there's proof, that a handful of Facebook pages have actually popped up supporting Christopher Dorner and essentially calling him a hero, calling him, saying that he should be admired for fighting the quote-unquote tyranny of the LAPD and the government. At least 600 people had liked a page supporting Dorner as of 10 p.m. on Thursday.
Yesterday morning, I think it was around 1,200.
Right.
Quite honestly.
Comments have ranged from a man with morals and a hero, a real rebel with a cause, all the way to rationalizing the killing of the daughter of the ex-LAPD captain who represented Dorner at his discipline hearing. Yes, somebody actually posted, the point in killing their families is for the crooked cops to suffer. If he directly kills them, they'll never know or suffer because they'll be dead. But going after the children will result in a lifetime of grief. That, I'm sorry, is just too far. It's bad enough that this guy is out there killing people, despite what you may think of his original case, that the LAPD was guilty of brutality. That could very well be. That's a whole different discussion. And
which has now been reopened.
Right. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But regardless of whether or not that's true, is he justified in this? It's a big question. And it's certainly one that concerns me to see people online supporting his cause, saying, have respect for a man who is willing to die for something instead of living for nothing. It's a very interesting time in our country. And whether or not he's justified is the big question. We're going to get into that.
It weaves into some other arguments we've been hearing.
Yep. We're going to get into that and how it's related to another issue that's been flooding the news media. That and more in just a few minutes, hopefully with Hal Sparks of the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide. This is Danielle and Shano of Talking Left. You're listening to us live on WeAct Radio and many more stations, and we'll be right back.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. Issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's Thursday, February 7, 2013.
She's shown that a company with more than $1 billion in sales
can do the right thing for our planet.
Obama nominates REI CEO for Interior.
Please be prepared. Winter Storm Nemo is gearing up as we speak.
Historic nor'easter heading for the northeast. Historic low water levels in the Great Lakes. Ben & Jerry's junks GMOs. Plus, the EPA's list of the nation's biggest polluters in your backyard.
All of that and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You once spent a month climbing mountains in Antarctica, which is just not something I'd think of doing. Because it seems like it'd be cold. And I was born in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, sure you were, Mr. Quote President. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, here we go again. Another major storm in the Northeast.
Yep, it's weather whiplash.
We do have blizzard advisories. Winter storm watches have been issued, so please be prepared. But then after that, you'll be kind of on the backside of Nemo, and that's when the snow will really start to pick up.
The Weather Channel is warning of another potentially historic nor'easter blizzard to hit Manhattan and Boston this weekend with hurricane-force winds, up to 2 feet of snow, and, quote, serious coastal flooding around Boston and Cape Cod. On the plus side, the storm will bring crucial precipitation to the region after last year's record warm winter that wasn't. Travel will be extremely dangerous, so stay safe out there. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announced this week that water levels in Lake Michigan and Lake Huron are now at the lowest levels ever recorded. That's since record-keeping began 100 years ago. And it's due to more than a decade of below normal rainfall, and also because of the legacy of man-made dredging projects back in the 1960s. Out in the arid West, a new report forecasts that the flow of the Colorado River, the major water supply for 7 states, will be at 54% below normal this summer, also due to persistent drought. Those extremes in weather brought to you by climate change.
Says you.
In Asia, the world's third largest paper company will stop destroying Indonesia's rainforest. The Forest Trust, a nonprofit organization, has succeeded in convincing Asia Pulp and Paper to halt all clear-cutting of natural rainforest in Indonesia, effective immediately. And some good news for the organics industry, too. Premium ice cream maker Ben & Jerry's has announced it will phase out genetically modified ingredients in all of its products this year.
Does that include chunky genetically modified monkey?
Ew!
I just ask the tough questions.
They also now support GMO labeling on all foods, saying they were convinced by data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that shows farmers' use of herbicides actually increases dramatically with GMO crops. They say, quote, we are not seeing the promise that GMO seeds were supposed to deliver. Is there a polluter in your backyard? The EPA has released its list of the top greenhouse gas polluters in the United States as mandated by Congress. The new data show that power plants are the top stationary sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, accounting for 45% of our nation's CO2. And for the first time ever, the EPA added emissions from oil, gas, and coal operations to its online greenhouse gas tracking tool. They show that fracking is now the second biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the nation. Say the polluters in your backyard. We've got the links at our website, greennews.bradblog.com.
Can you actually go and look up your house and see how close the polluters are to you?
Yes.
Cool.
Finally, President Obama has nominated the CEO of the outdoor retailer REI, Sally Jewell, as new Secretary for the Department of the Interior to replace Ken Salazar and oversee over 500 million acres of public lands.
Sally has helped turn a stalling outdoor retailer into one of America's most successful and environmentally conscious companies.
Sally Jewell is a former oil engineer turned commercial banker for oil projects, which might help gain support from Republicans. She then spent the last 8 years at REI.
I have a great job at REI today, but there's no role that compares than the call to serve my country as Secretary of the Department of Interior.
Both environmental groups and the oil and gas industry expressed cautious optimism that she would, if confirmed, balance competing stakeholders between oil and gas extraction on public lands versus the public's use of public lands. That's REI's core business.
As a member of REI myself, I'm encouraged about her becoming Interior Secretary because if things don't work out, we'll be able to return her. No questions asked. Get all our money back.
Just like REI's return policy.
For more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please help us celebrate our 10th year of troublemaking and muckraking. Consider a donation or a purchase of one of our cool new premiums. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Because you know satisfaction guaranteed. Satisfaction guaranteed. I've been waiting for satisfaction guaranteed. I've been spending all the time for satisfaction guaranteed.
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. So we may have Hal Sparks. Not sure yet, but we'll keep you updated.
He's on West Coast time. So.
Yes, and he had a big show last night.
Ice House in Pasadena, California.
Yes.
Pasadena, beautiful, beautiful town.
He is somebody who is always busy, always doing a million things. So hopefully he is getting some rest, especially also considering he has a baby as well. I'm sure sleep is a valuable commodity. But before the break, we were talking about Christopher Dorner, this ex-LAPD officer who was apparently fired for stating that there was a brutality issued within the
You don't have to use
LAPD.
the word apparently, I don't think. He was fired for making, now.
Allegedly false claims.
No, they were alleged. There were hearings and all that, administrative hearings and reviews and all that. It's kind of like after a trial when someone's, found guilty, you can say that they, now question, they're going to reopen it and all that. And understandably so, considering some of the things that many police departments around the country have done over the years, we're skeptical, but at the same time, those were the findings of the review boards and things like that. So,
but essentially, he was fired from the LAPD. He was still somehow admitted to the Navy.
He's a Navy man.
Yes. Served for 4 years and was released just recently.
February 1st.
When he submitted a manifesto of sorts saying that what he is doing is essentially fighting the tyranny of the government, and then went on to kill at least 2 police officers, a 28-year-old daughter of another police officer, and causing some major uproar in the Southern California area. The question is...
Well, how do you think it's going to end? Well, first of all, you got all those speculators on the TV. Now he's a crazy man.
Yeah.
Of course. He's a crazy man. Anyone who uses a gun is a crazy man.
Exactly. Anybody. This is why we wanted to talk to Hal Sparks, because he made the brilliant and appropriate point in this whole Second Amendment argument that if you are the one out there saying the Second Amendment is to protect against tyranny from the government, you're saying you want to kill cops.
Whether you're willing to kill.
Right.
You're willing to shoot a cop.
And that's exactly what Christopher Dorner is doing.
This is in real time. This is real time. This is not the romanticized, we're, the revolutionary we're fighting the redcoats here. This is in the 21st century. If you believe that your gun is to fight against a tyrannical government, this is what it means.
Right. This is what it looks like. And this is just one incident.
What do you think?
This is just one person fighting a government he believes to be tyrannical. If this was a whole group, a whole militia, not to use a redundant term, how would this look to the country, to the world as a whole? Right now, as Shane said, this looks like a crazy man. But this is what it looks like to
Perhaps it's crazy to say you take up
Second
arms
Amendment.
against. Perhaps it's crazy to say you'd shoot people in your government.
Right.
But that's one of the arguments, and I've heard it from the right and the left. We heard it just yesterday. Melissa Harris Perry saying this, that one of the reasons we have the Second Amendment is to fight a tyrannical government. I just don't believe it. It's not there. There is one of the Federalist Papers that mentions tyrannical governments of Europe, but what they're talking about is how you can't have guns in Europe because the governments are tyrannical and they don't trust the people. And then they went on to say, we, the people, are the government here, and we think it's silly to not trust the people with guns.
Right. I mean, we've spoken about it here on this show about more likely reasonings, more likely accurate history of the purpose of the Second Amendment.
By the actual notes and speeches and writings from the time.
Exactly. And none of them include protection from a tyrannical government. So when we look at that definition, that interpretation of the Second Amendment as a whole, it doesn't seem to hold water.
No.
It seems to, have a lot of holes just on its face.
But
no
by
pun
that
intended.
reasoning, he could negotiate his surrender.
Right.
This guy. And then say, my defense is the Second Amendment. I don't know that anyone's ever raised a Second Amendment defense.
Me neither.
Would the NRA support him?
A good question.
Would Wayne LaPierre say, yes, you were exercising your Second Amendment rights?
Would
against what you saw as a tyranny? How do we measure tyranny?
How about
on what standard?
How about even the Democrats who have gone and continued this reasoning as to the purpose of the Second Amendment? Would they also feel that he is justified if he truly believes that the government is tyrannical?
And just to make a note, we're not proposing that this is right. This is
absolutely not.
We're just putting
it's
these questions
just
out there.
the question.
If you take their logical the reasoning to the logical next step, this is what it looks like.
Right. Everybody talks about this being the purpose of the Second Amendment, of having the right to fight against your government if you believe it's out of line. They talk about the romanticizing of it, but they never really had a case in recent times of what it really looks like. Well, now we're seeing it with Christopher Dorner. And
but then they could say, well, the government isn't tyrannical.
Who decides?
Right. At what point?
Right. Who makes that decision? Because if you ask the government's never going to say they're tyrannical.
Of course not.
And there's many people on both the right and the left right now, especially with our previous discussion all about drones, that might feel otherwise.
Exactly.
Ask, citizens of Pakistan and Yemen who have had family members.
Whether or not a government is tyrannical is going to be subject to interpretation. What interpretation do we use? And what's wrong with his?
Right.
That's...
Well, and the question also, the question is also raised, okay, so if the NRA supports this, if those who feel that the Second Amendment was written to protect against the tyrannical government support Christopher Dorner in his fight for what he believes is against tyranny, how far does that go? How far do people who use that argument, think that they can take this? What are they willing to do if they honestly believe that the government is tyrannical? And what do we as a society feel about that? Because if you're telling me that it's okay to kill cops, is it okay to kill soldiers? Is it okay to kill generals?
Well,
is it okay to kill elected leaders? Are they going to sit there and tell me that it's okay to
no, they won't.
assassinate other?
You know what? And I can answer that. These are easy. We're putting these as rhetorical to make an argument here. Just about everybody, 99% of people say, no, of course not. This is not what it looks like, because it's much easier to talk in these broad romantic terms and accept them. But when it's put into action like this, absolutely not. Nobody, I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks this is appropriate in any way, shape, or form, NRA included.
But if they
don't.
So
stop making that argument then.
If they don't, and as they shouldn't, because this obviously is a case of an individual who, he may have originally had a case. The LAPD could have very well been guilty of brutality. But from what he's doing, he has killed an innocent people. Is he any better at this point?
No, absolutely not. No, this is not the way to solve it.
Right.
And the Second Amendment didn't contemplate solving it this way. Period.
No, anytime you beget violence with violence, I'm sorry, the original point you were fighting for has been lost.
It has.
I don't understand what people think when they say this is the reasoning behind it.
And even, okay, let's even give it to them, saying that was the reason behind it. It's a bad reason. It's a bad one.
Well, it just doesn't hold water.
We are the government.
It doesn't hold water. Why would the government write its own means to disable itself into the Constitution?
By the same thing, why would you join a union with the option to secede? The same argument there. But then they could argue, well, tyranny is when greater than half the people agree that it's tyrannical. Well, then vote.
Right. If you're more than half the people, I don't see. We don't live in a dictatorship.
Vote.
Get active.
Right.
Protest. Don't become Christopher Dorner. I'm really interested to watch what the NRA is going to... they're going to be asked on this.
I don't know that they are. I don't know that... I haven't heard anybody put these together yet. Hal intimated before he actually saw it ahead of time.
Yes, he did.
He didn't predict this would occur, but he asked the question. And this guy answered it.
And hopefully, they catch this guy before he is able to do more damage and take the lives of more innocent people. And hopefully there's a thorough investigation of the original firing and to make sure there wasn't a case of brutality there and the LAPD. It really, really changes the argument of what we've seen recently. So... anyhow, I guess we are not going to hear from Mr. Hal Sparks, but we wish him a good Sunday.
Yeah.
No big deal. We're going to go ahead and run to a break. This is Danielle and Shano here. You're listening to Talking Left. Thanks so far to Mr. Richard Fowler and Lee Camp, our previous guests. We still have Nicole Belle coming up in just a few minutes. And thanks for listening wherever you are checking us out. RadioOrNot.com, Progressive Blends, SoFlo Radio, or, of course, WeAct Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C., or download the podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And this is Talking Left.
Does the name Dirk Kempthorne mean anything to you? He was a little-known Idaho politico before becoming George W. Bush's industry-coddling Secretary of the Interior in 2006. While Dirk was not big on protecting our nation's public lands and natural resources from polluters and exploiters, he was very big on protecting the privileges of his own office. In particular, the environment in which he was expected to, excuse the crude reference, pee. It seems that the Secretary's personal private office toilet had leaks, so in 2007, he had it renovated. No problem with that, except that the cost to us taxpayers was $222,000. Yes, his 10-foot by 10-foot water closet cost more to renovate than many people pay for an entire house. Good grief, is that even possible? Well, yes, if you're a former corporate executive who expects the facility to be worthy of your exalted station in life. Thanks to a Freedom of Information request, details of his palatial potty purchase have finally come to light. They include $26,000 for custom cabinetry, but he apparently thought that made sense, for he was, after all, a cabinet official. And the $689 faucet added a needed touch of elegance to a room that otherwise would merely be functional. But what took Kempthorne's throne over the top, all the way to interior design majesty, was the inclusion of a $3,500 Sub-Zero refrigerator and freezer, tucked tastefully behind wood paneling. As I think we can all agree, a latrine without a proper fridge is just another crapper. And while the bears in our national parks do indeed defecate in the woods, Dirk is no bear. This is Jim Hightower saying, to see some photos of the Secretary's luxurious loo, go to WSBTV.com, then search for Kempthorne.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, You can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder has become the 6th Republican governor to decide to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. The federal government pays all of the cost in the first 3 years and 90% of the cost after that for the Medicaid expansion. The expansion in the Affordable Care Act was designed to bring health insurance coverage to millions of low-income people who don't have it now. The U.S. Supreme Court made the Medicaid expansion optional for states, so many Republican governors are resistant to approving the expansion. Michigan's Snyder joins GOP governors in Arizona, Nevada, North Dakota, New Mexico, and Ohio in approving the Medicaid expansion. About 9,000 New York City school bus drivers and matrons have been on strike now for over 4 weeks. The National Labor Relations Board has ruled the strike is a legal one. Workers represented by Amalgamated Transit Workers Local 1181 are on strike to protect their jobs, their wages, and benefits as New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg tries to take away those protections by bidding out the work to the cheapest private companies. Here's one of the striking workers at a rally in New York.
Why am I on strike? The mayor wants to take away our employee provision protection. If my company lose contract, I lose my job. I've been on this job for over 14 years. I love what I do. We all love what we do. We enjoy it. We love working with children. And I refuse to let the mayor take my job and everybody's job away. 1181.
An open-pit iron mining bill has cleared 2 legislative committees in Wisconsin where Republicans supporting the legislation control both houses. The Wisconsin League of Conservation Voters says the open-pit mining bill exempts mining companies from some environmental regulations. The league says the bill will allow Wisconsin waterways to be filled with mining waste, prevent citizens from having input on proposed mines, and subject the state's groundwater to toxins like lead, mercury, and arsenic. Environmental groups and Native American tribes in Wisconsin oppose the mining bill. They say it will allow mining companies to contaminate the state's groundwater and allows mining companies to dump toxic mining waste into sensitive wetlands. A report by the Workers' Rights Consortium says Palermo Pizza violated the University of Wisconsin's Labor Standards Code. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka says the report makes it clear that striking workers at Palermo were in fact punished for attempting to exercise basic labor rights at the 4th largest pizza maker in the country. The report says Palermo's manipulated federal immigration enforcement procedures, using them as a pretext to fire 75 striking immigrant workers. The Worker Rights Consortium is an independent labor rights monitoring organization that conducts investigations into labor rights violations around the globe. The Palermo Workers Union is fighting to form a union at Palermo's and has launched a boycott of Palermo pizzas. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Hey, Dad, how do you throw a curveball? How do you build a fort? How do refrigerators run? How do fish learn how to swim?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
How high can you jump?
But you don't have to know every answer.
How many phone numbers are there?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
How do cell phones work?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
What's electricity?
They just need you.
What's the moon made of?
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. So yes, in the right corner, Carl Frisch. Karl Rove. Wow, wrong Carl. In the other right corner, Representative Steve King of Iowa.
The far right corner.
Yes, the far right corner is Rove. The far right corner is Steve King. For anybody who has missed this war of the Republican Party over the quote-unquote conservative victory project is just missing out. This news is delighting Democrats and progressives everywhere as the infighting in the Republican Party has taken on a life of its own.
Now they're fighting over the money.
Yes. Well, and they're also, in good old-fashioned Republican style, using any opportunity as a fundraiser. For anybody who hasn't heard this story, Karl Rove and his fellows at American Crossroads.
We actually reported that. That was our top story last week.
No, we reported it for Progressive Voices.
No, I think it was our top story last week. because I got the story Sunday morning. It was our top story last week.
Okay. I trust you to remember that much better than me. Anybody who maybe missed last week, yes, to recap, Karl Rove and American Crossroads has launched the Conservative Victory Project, trying to push out Tea Party members that they call unelectable. Well, one of those Tea Partiers that Karl Rove is fighting is Representative Steve King, Republican of Iowa. We need a new letter. It shouldn't be just, DIA anymore. We need a T there because these are Tea Partiers now. They're not Republicans.
TB? Oh, they don't like teabagger. Okay, TP.
Yes. Either one
You're
is
screwed
perfect.
either way, buddies.
Yes.
Well, at first I thought it was Joe Walsh who was the first one who the nutso guy who didn't pay his child support, and
yes, that was,
and he was actually a Tea Party who got defeated because he was so crazy. So I guess his face wasn't the right one for this.
Well, he can only go so far. He can only complain about it so much if he got defeated. Steve King, however, he is only listed by the New York Times as a possible target. Karl Rove has not officially gone after him, nor has this conservative.
You're listing targets. Because Joe Walsh actually formed another PAC to battle Karl Rove's PAC.
But Steve King, in good old-fashioned Republican style, is using this as a way to fundraise.
Sure.
He's sent his supporters donation request emails asking for contributions of $20, $50, or $100 to help me ward off Karl Rove's baseless attacks.
And it's interesting. The only person Karl Rove seems to be going after is Ashley Judd at this point.
Yes, he does seem to be quite infatuated with her.
I think he's got a crush on her.
You think? It's kind of like the boy on the playground thing?
I think he's got a big old crush on Ashley Judd. How can he not?
I'm sorry.
She's brilliant, stunning.
Yes, I feel bad for Ashley Judd. Yes.
Just ask Andrea Mitchell about that.
The Conservative Victory Project, a representative from there, did say to the New York Times, we're concerned about Steve King's, quote, Todd Aiken problem. So Steve King is now using this as an opportunity to gain support from his Tea Party constituents.
And Karl Rove has been invited on all the conservative TV shows to you better explain yourself, mister.
Yes, absolutely.
And he brings out obvious cases, Sharon Angle,
Todd Aiken, Rupert, or what was his name, Murdoch,
Richard Murdoch,
Richard Murdoch,
and the I'm Not a Witch,
Christine O'Donnell,
right?
Yes.
But then the other side brings out, well, then you would have never had Ted Cruz, and you wouldn't have had Marco Rubio, and you wouldn't have situations in which Tea Partiers have won.
Right. I think this goes back to the Tea Party really creating a big problem for the Republican Party.
Which Lee can't, was it Lee or which? No, Richard pointed out that it's a problem for all of us. Then
it is.
If half of your entire political process is nuts, and you need 60% to get anywhere, you're in big trouble.
Well, but I think that this really could be a win for Democrats if it goes the right way for us. The Republicans gerrymandered the heck out of their districts in 2010, allowed all these Tea Party members to get into office, and now have essentially put them in a safe zone where it doesn't matter how far right they go, that the districts can still be voted, be won by Republicans. However, if that Republican vote is split and there's two candidates on the ticket, one an official Tea Party candidate and one a more moderate Republican, that could work out really well for some Democrats.
And if you want evidence of this, ever since Michelle Bachmann started this little tradition a little while ago, look at what's going to happen Tuesday night. We have the leader
Two responses.
We have the president speaking, and then I think it's since 1966 there's been the opposition response in 66, but then Michelle Bachmann decided to look at the wrong camera and give us a Tea Party response a few years back. We're now going to be getting that from Rand Paul. So do we have three parties now? We have to ask that question at some point.
Well, I think that presents another opportunity as well. There are splits in the Democratic Party, or at least those who lean more towards the Democratic Party. Ones who want to push even more progressive, and ones that kind of like tacking to the center. If the Republicans split between Tea Party and Republican, it may eventually open up room for a Green Party or an Independent Party.
No, I'm talking about there's a Democratic Party, There's a Republican Party, and then there's a crazy party.
Yes, and by crazy, we don't mean that they just have all the fun sometime late at night. So anyway, just something to think about, and we love watching Republicans eat their own. It brings me joy. I know that's horrible, but it does.
It tastes kind of like chicken.
Yes. So we're going to run to a break and come back with Nicole Belle, one of our favorite people in the whole wide world of Crooks and Liars. She'll be joining us in just a few minutes here on Talking Left. You're listening to us live on SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend, and of course, WeAct Radio in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back. Stick around.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending. We got no plans.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. I read a book recently entitled 4 Horsemen, The Survival Manual. Yes, I read a book. I know it's antiquated, but my Twitter machine was broken and I had no choice, so stop judging me. In it, the authors talk about a 1976 essay by Sir John Glubb, in which he details the stages of empires and the signs that an empire is collapsing. The book argues that Western civilization is now in the final stage, the age of decadence. Symptom 1, unsustainable behavior. I don't think we exhibit this at all. I realize that it takes the amount of 3 bottles of water to produce 1 bottle of water, and that a McDonald's hamburger costs like $60 to produce and $1 to purchase. But math is for and in my head, 60 minus 1 equals boring, so go yourself. Look, a cheap printer at Walmart costs like $30 and comes with an ink cartridge, but a new ink cartridge costs $35. So when the cartridge runs out, I throw away the printer, buy a new one, and save $5. Some say that's bad for Mother Earth, but I say, don't you think that Mother Earth would want us to be smart if she were still with us, God rest her soul? Symptom 2, an immensely wealthy elite and massive disparity between the rich and poor. Look, I understand that the top 10% possess 80% of all financial assets, but they are our betters, and they worked hard for that money, and we should admire them. Symptom 3, instead of angering the masses, the repulsively wealthy are admired. I don't do that. We don't do that. But I would have Steve Jobs. I'm not gay, but I would have done that. Symptom 4, cheap credit. I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about Steve. Steve! 5, exorbitant consumption. So I looked up this word in the dictionary, and it said tuberculosis of the lungs. We don't have that. Symptom 6, people convinced that a dizzying amount of consumption and materialism will make them content. I don't think Western civilization has a problem here because we think we need this stuff. And if you think you need it, then you can get lots of cool I have a 22-inch flat screen TV for my 52-inch flat screen TV. I leave it on to keep the bigger one company when I'm not home. 7, debasement of currency. Now, as I understand it, that's when ocean currents flood your basement, and I have to admit, we have a bit of an issue with that. 8, overextended military. Overextended? We have the best warriors in the world. We have 900 military bases around the globe and more drones in the sky than birds. Overextended my ass. Symptom 9, debauchery. I mean, you call it debauchery, but I call with a donut and then eating it recycling. And symptom number 10, the economy presents distractions from what's really going on. This is often called bread and circuses and includes gladiatorial spectacles. Oh, no, you didn't. Look, you can tear apart my icing-filled bear claw all you want, but I will not stand here while you insult ultimate fighting in football. Watching beastly men beat the living out of each other for sport is one of the few pleasures I have left. This past Super Bowl was the most watched in history. So what does that say for your idea that we only like circuses? Besides, I don't only watch sports. I watch Top Chef and Chopped and 16 and Pregnant with Another Idiot and wait, there's one more thing on here. It says during the final years of the Roman, Ottoman, and Spanish empires, they made celebrities out of their chefs. Well, I don't think Jamie Oliver and Wolfgang Puck are gonna like that you're saying that about them. And honestly, what do you want us to do? We have all this money laying around. Why not fix up a little dolphin fin foie gras? Anyway, that's been your Moment of Clarity from LeeCamp.net. You'll notice that Moment of Clarity is just about the only YouTube channel without ads on it, but I also understand that many people are not in a position to donate to help keep MOC going. So instead, why not donate a single tweet per day? It's easy and quick. Just go to donateyouraccount.com/LeeCamp. You can sign up to donate 1 tweet or 1 Facebook post per day, and you never have to think about it again. It's all automatic. Thanks a lot. Keep fighting.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
It's our last errand today, Jimmy. Just need to pick up some light bulbs.
Whoa, there's so many. Did Grandma tell you which ones to buy?
No, but check out the label on this package. It'll help us find the right bulbs.
Does it really matter?
Well, sure. The new light bulbs use a lot less energy, so we save money on our electric bill by using an energy-saving incandescent, CFL, or LED.
How about this bulb?
Let's see. We need to replace the 60-watt bulbs in our bedside lamps. That one is 800 lumens, so it should do the trick.
I've never heard of lumens.
Lumens tell us how bright the light is. The more lumens, the brighter the bulb.
You know, Grandpa, you're a pretty bright guy.
Yeah, you're pretty smart yourself, Jimmy.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. That's EnergySavers.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Energy.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yes, you are. Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. You are listening to us live on SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend, TalkingLeft.com, and, of course, WeAct Radio in Washington, D.C. Joining us now is one of our favorite people in the whole entire universe, Miss Nicole Belle of CrooksandLiars.com. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Danielle.
We've
I
missed
have to
you.
tell you, when I saw the little Twitter thing saying, "Oh, coming up next," and I looked at who was already on your show today, I was like, "Wow, one of these things is not like the other."
Oh,
how did I get in this list?
Well, you are one of our favorite people. We adore you, as you know, and it just, we feel like we hadn't talked to you in so long. We missed you.
Oh, I miss you guys too. You guys are doing fantastic, though. I do listen to you guys, so.
Oh, thank you.
Very proud of your show.
Well, your blog over at Crooks and Liars was as brilliant as usual, and it was something that I think is really important considering that the sequester is just 20 days away now. You've highlighted Paul Krugman's 7-word statement, the threat to the recovery is Washington. You want to explain that for people who maybe missed the Sunday morning talk shows because they're not political geeks like we are?
Or they're just not masochists like we are.
No doubt.
Yes.
But, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to this. We know the answer to these problems. We have been here before. We know how to get ourselves out of this economic slide, but we won't do it. And the reason we won't do it is because Washington is filled with children. These petulant little brats sitting there and going, no, everything has to have, excuse me, every spending increase has to be matched with the tax cut. Everything has to, we can't possibly spend, cut anything in defense. We can't possibly do this. Everything has to come on the backs of the poor and middle class. That is not the answer. And we know it's not the answer. And Krugman has been saying this from the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's what's going to be happening. That's the conversation in Washington.
It amazes me that in addition to learning from history, how many times our nation as well as other nations around the world have been through economic hard times and have gotten their way out by investing in their nations. But we're seeing it play out in Europe, especially in Spain, right now as they're just slightly ahead of us in imposing this austerity. And yet it seems like Washington, and by Washington, I mean both sides, are still obsessed with cutting spending and imposing these, austere measures on some of the hardest working and lowest paid people in our nation. How do they not see what's right in front of their face?
Well, the sad part, Danielle, is what's right in front of their face is a donation from a very wealthy person who doesn't want his taxes raised.
Amen.
So that's what they see, and that's the way they're acting. And that's fundamentally the problem with Washington. I promise you, if we had publicly financed elections, this is not a conversation we would be having.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to, of course, all campaign spending, but I think Citizens United was really the Trojan horse of corporate takeover, of, open, blatant, strong corporate takeover of our political process and our politicians. This quote from Paul Krugman, "The threat to recovery is Washington," was something he said on one of the Sunday news talk shows last week. And you have a great line: "There is more truth in those 7 words than the entire 11.5 hours of Sunday news programming we monitor put together. It's difficult to," I'm skipping a line here, "it's difficult to gauge success from the absence of devastation. There is no argument that the preemptory measures taken in the early days of the first Obama term did slowly turn the economy around." I mean, it seems like that should be a fact. It's clear. There's evidence to back it up. There's, economic progress, despite however difficult it's been. But yet Republicans are still debating that original point. That the stimulus helped.
Right.
How do we go back and make them understand history?
We can't, because we live in a post-fact world. I mean, the whole notion that they've got, let's go back to when the country was great, and I'm unclear exactly what era it is that they want to take us back to. Clearly, it's the time where minorities and women knew their places. But, when they say things like that, I go, okay, you want to go back to that time? Talk to me about what the top marginal tax rate was. Talk to me about what the government infrastructure was at that time. I don't want to tout another podcast on your show.
Oh, go ahead.
I was listening to Mark Maron's WTF podcast because he was talking to Carl Reiner. Carl Reiner was in World War II, served in the military, and then when he got out, he was talking about all of the stuff that the country made available so that people, after sacrificing and serving during World War II, could actually establish a life and could, look to owning a home and look to putting together a future. And it wasn't just, roads and bridges and things like that. They had arts programs. They had all of these amazing things that enabled people to establish themselves, and enabled the economy to grow, enabled the country to grow, and that's when we were dominant.
Yeah, those hippies back then and their arts programs, it's just amazing. It's like in public schools these days, it's hard to even find a school that still offers arts programs, let alone a program that would be available to returning soldiers. It seems that all the government has for them to look forward is another tour of duty. It's really astounding how much has changed in just a half century.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's why it's so frustrating, and I think why Krugman's words have such resonance. We know these answers. We've done this before. This is what we did to get ourselves out of the Great Depression, and it worked. We're debating this stuff because Eric Cantor doesn't want, any kind of tax increases at any point. He doesn't want to spend money because he says that's not being fiscally responsible for our grandchildren. Well, guess what kind of country we're leaving our grandchildren with these austerity measures?
Yeah, it's certainly not morally responsible or, just at all. Even the latest plan that the Republicans have, quote unquote, offered for the Sequester deal would require a tenth of the federal workforce being laid off, a tenth of the workforce. And I think from looking at your article, this was the whole original debate that Paul Krugman was having with, Carly Fiorina on the Sunday morning talk shows, is that they seem to have this contempt for the quote unquote government job, which is hilarious because half of them want to work in government. Half of them want to be elected as officials. Yet the first thing that they seem to take aim at is a government employee. Is there any seriousness at all in a Republican proposal that cuts the workforce that much, or is it just simply to say that they offered something and Obama didn't, quote unquote, compromise?
Yeah, no, that's obviously it. I mean, again, we live in this post-fact society, and this is as much the fault of the traditional media as it is of Republicans in Washington, because the whole Aesop's fable, about the snake crossing the river, and you knew this was my nature from the beginning, so why trust a snake?
Right.
Why trust a Republican? You knew this was their nature from the beginning. But it is the Fourth Estate's responsibility to hold up truth and say, okay, they say this, but this is the truth. And we don't have that. We have a media that has failed us. And I think it's TPP did a poll, and the trust in the media in the U.S. is lower than it is of almost anything except Congress.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
I know. Do you think that we're ever going to escape, at least in the foreseeable future, this deadline government, this constantly having to deal with the entire economy, the entire strength of our nation in 3-month increments? I mean, is this our future of set a deadline and then the only thing we achieve at that deadline is setting another deadline?
I honestly, as we're currently situated, I think we are. I think this is what we're stuck because we don't have grown-ups in Washington. When you have to negotiate with people like Eric Cantor, when you have people like John McCain on the Sunday talk shows saying, I mean, he's actually today, because it's Sunday and we're monitoring the talk shows today, he actually said that this has been the longest period of stagnation the country has ever seen. Words have meanings. That we've had positive job growth.
Right.
That we're not in a stagnation.
Right. There's been positive job growth. And just to remind everybody, we are speaking with Nicole Belle of Crooks and Liars. There's been positive job growth despite the reduction in the federal workforce, which you cite here. The total government employment has decreased over 580,000 jobs since the end of the recession, so since July 2009. 580,000 jobs. If you added that to the employment we have gained in the private sector, I mean, that would actually have an impact in the unemployment rate. That would actually have a large impact in our entire economy. But it's this, not to restate the same word, contempt for the federal workforce, contempt for one of the few unionized employment we have remaining in this country. Will they ever get over it?
No, they won't, because that is what, I mean, look at where they're targeting the stuff. It is exactly unionized, the last remaining unionized workers for the most part. We're talking teachers, police officers, firemen. These are the people who that 500,000 are, not the bureaucrats that Carly Fiorina insists they are. It is actually the people on the front lines every single day dealing with the public.
Yep.
And those are the people that get knocked. I mean, seriously, if we had got those almost 600,000 jobs back, what would our unemployment rate be?
Right.
It would be at a point where that would not be a top discussion.
Right. And although, hey, I'm not the economist and I'm not a statistician, so I can't certainly say what it would be, but it'd certainly be higher than it is now. And 600,000 people would be able to put food on the table for their families. And as you state in this article, the largest cuts in raw numbers to that 600,000 job losses were teachers, of all people. It's just, where did our morals go as a nation? But I know that's a rhetorical question.
The problem is when we glorify the wealthy by virtue of the fact that they are wealthy, when we glorify corporations as job creators, even though most of the jobs they create are outside of this country, then we are operating in a completely amoral system. It's not immoral, it's amoral. There is no morals involved in being wealthy.
Absolutely. In fact, quite the opposite, it seems these days. But that's why people have places like Crooks and Liars to go and find out the real news and read amazing pieces like this one. I really, really enjoyed your article, your post there, Nicole. It was awesome. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. We missed you, and we'll have to get you back on again soon.
Yes, please do. Let's talk again.
Okay, Nicole Belle, everybody, of Crooks and Liars. Again, one of our favorite people in the world because she rocks. Go and check out her blog as well as lots of other great stuff at crooksandliars.com. Just a few more minutes left in the show, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be right back.
Psst, yo quiero Nicole Belle.
Hi, this is Tim Cormall from The Tim Cormall Show. Join me and my guests most weeks for a progressive roundtable discussion about politics, news, and other fun topics. We laugh a lot about the hilarious antics of the right-wing nutjobs, as well as have serious discussions about issues affecting all of our lives. You can check out The Tim Cormall Show at timcormall.com, and you can subscribe to the show for free in iTunes by searching for The Tim Cormall Show. You can also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Tim Cormall. That's CORRIMAL. So come on over and join in the fun at timcormall.com.
You're listening to and watching Filter Free Radio. Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Spread the responsibility. We're all in this together, right? You and me and Joe and Mary and whoever, we're all in this together. So spread the responsibility around. Students, get active and strike on education issues. Journalists, challenge corporate censorship of the truth and the real issues that we're facing today. Police officials, refuse to impose orders that you know to be immoral or wrong.
Or illegal.
Or illegal, right? Torturing, that's bad.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to The Nicole Sandler Show at RadioOrNot.com.
Your view is not being represented in this country because all of our views have been corrupted by money and politics. Remember, 94% of the time, the candidate who raises the most money wins.
That's the fact that we need to drive home constantly. It's all about the money. Dylan Radigan, you rock.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime.
7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. So here's a 26-second message of encouragement.
Hi, I'm Stacy. Look, I've been there. It's tough. And I just want to say, if you find yourself feeling negative, use it as motivation. Let it be like the fuel in the fire to keep you going. 'Cause the best is yet to come. Seriously, you're capable of great things you probably haven't even dreamed of yet. So don't quit now. See you at graduation.
Do you have 26 seconds to convince a student to stay at their desk? Now you can share your message of support at boostup.org. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do you throw a curveball? How do you build a fort? How do refrigerators run? How do fish learn how to swim?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
How high can you jump?
But you don't have to know every answer.
How many phone numbers are there?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
How do cell phones work?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
What's electricity?
They just need you.
What's the moon made of?
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The most important online radio station.
It's easier than ever to listen to SoFlo. On the air and everywhere. On any computer, any mobile device, iPhone, iTouch, and anywhere you are, just hit SoFloRadio.com. Tell your friends about South Florida's radio network, SoFloRadio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yes, you are. Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thanks again, wherever you're listening. WeAct Radio, SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend, or maybe you're checking us out on our own home sweet home, talkingleft.com. So,
Ustream radio or not.
Ustream radio or not. Thank you. I have it in my thank yous. I have to have it written down now, and that's an awesome thing to remember everything. Plus, that's a given because if you're chatting if you're chatting and hanging out with us, that's where you're watching us. So last week we talked about Donald Trump and his threatening to sue.
In other words, we always like to end on a funny story. As soon as you say the word Trump, you have to
it's got to
giggle.
be funny.
You have to giggle.
And him threatening to sue Bill Maher. Well, he made this big announcement on Fox and Freedom.
And I have some interesting news today because Bill Maher promised me $5 million. This is unrelated.
Right.
$5 million. You have breaking news. Big story.
What is it?
But he promised me $5 million for charity if I provided certain information. Well, I provided the information. He didn't pay. So today, I sue Bill Maher for $5 million for charity.
But you know what his attorney's going to say? He's going to say, look, he was...
we don't care what Steve Doocy has to say about anything.
Exactly. No. Okay, sorry. Yes, but Bill Maher has officially received the lawsuit.
The lawsuit.
Yes. Donald Trump has officially sued him over a joke.
And he said, he also said he promised him. No, he didn't. He said he'd be willing to offer. We went through this. He's willing to offer $5 million to charity. Apparently,
he is as good at legal issues as he is at business.
And certainly running casinos.
Right. And so Bill Maher has officially released a new rule in response to Donald Trump. And he says that now that Donald Trump is suing him for $5 million, because he says he's proven he is not the love child of an orangutan, Donald Trump must learn two things: what a joke is and what a contract is, because obviously he knows neither. Maher made the joke about his being related to an orange hair orangutan, as that was the only creature in nature that had the same color hair as Donald Trump, but Trump obviously did not get the point that it was a parody, or as Bill Maher said, a form of something we in the comedy business call a joke. Yes. The hilarious part that Shane and I reported on Progressive Voices and possibly here as well was that the document Trump submitted was, the short form certificate of live birth, which he criticized for the president for submitting in his whole birther scandal back during the president's first term.
Well, in shame on the newspapers.
Yes,
and
because they
includes New
continue
York
to
Times.
say birth certificate.
They keep saying Donald Trump produced his birth certificate.
No, he did not.
If you're using Donald Trump worldview and factual bases and
a distinction
standards
that nobody would have made had it not been for Donald Trump making this an issue.
And the what is it, the Swift boat? The Swift boat guy was the first one, I think.
Yeah, and didn't Orly Tate's?
Oh yeah,
whatever her name is. Yes, Maher finished up the segment, which you can check out over on his YouTube page. I'm sure lots of other Democratic sites have it as well. But he finished up the segment saying, "But remember who we're dealing with here: a man for a little extra publicity will happily keep a debate alive over whether his family reunions are held at a zoo." That's pretty much a good synopsis of Donald Trump, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I hope that Bill Maher gets lots and lots of publicity. Not that he isn't incredibly well known and brilliant, funny, and all that, but hey.
And you know what? I hope people donate to the charities and raise the money out of spite.
I'd be interested to hear what the charities have to say about this.
Me too.
Because they're the ones who actually have standing to sue.
Right, but it is hilarious, and you have to love Bill Maher for making light of such a great situation. He gets sued, and
there is one issue
gives him
that
a
I
comedy
have.
routine.
There's one issue I have, and while this is all publicity and stunt and all that, it costs money to run courts.
Yeah, it's not.
That is part of our government budget.
Exactly.
So it's not his little toy. So when this gets dismissed, I hope that Donald Trump is on the hook for all court costs and fees.
Yeah, and Maher made that point as well.
Good.
Criticized him for making the mockery out of our legal system and said not to be played with by, rich idiots. So anyhow, this has been Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you very much to Nicole Sandler, our original friend and landlady.
Who will not throw us in jail for not paying rent.
Exactly.
She doesn't charge us, which is so sweet.
George Rodriguez of SoFlo Radio for making sure we can get to all our other stations. Everybody over at WeAct Radio, Alex Lawson, Kimon Freeman, Pete Callahan, Rich Webster, Daniel Marans, David Schuster, to Mike Hardiman for making our amazing intro music, to all our great guests, Richard Fowler, Lee Camp, Nicole Belle, and special to Hal Sparks. That was him calling him, wasn't it?
Yeah, he said the number he was getting was busy.
Oh, no.
I don't know if we locked the lines by accident.
It's entirely possible. You know how the phone system is in this studio. But
we'll give him a different week,
we give him a big shout-out because we love him anyway.
Waking up, Hal.
Yes, and if you're listening on WeAct, please stick around for Mark Levine. And a big thank you to Tom and Louise Hartman for all that stuff, too. We'll be back next week. This has been Talking Left. Thanks for listening.